Have you guys heard of Matt Miller? He's not only the guy who paints those amazing portraits of all your favorite heroes in the liberty movement and in pop culture, but he's also now an official sponsor of this show. From Murray Rothbard to Ron Paul, Dr. Robert Malone to Darth Maul, Matt Miller's Liberty Portraits has something fun for everyone to spice up your home or office and showcase your heroes. Go check out his incredible work at libertyportraits.com. Grab a print to impress your friends, hire him for a custom portrait, or bring him out to a festival to capture your event in real life in a beautiful and unique way. To find out more, just head over to libertyportraits.com. Once again, that is libertyportraits.com. Today's show is sponsored by libertarian conspiratorial fantasy author Jack Casey. Whether you're looking for a 3-book fantasy sci-fi epic of love, death, and dystopian civil war like the Royal Green series, or just looking for a quick, dark, comedic cultural commentary tale about a transsexual slayer of COVID regime vampires, like his latest book, WVW, Jack Casey Books will keep you adequately entertained and pondering the universe to your weird little heart's content. He's the Ayn Rand meets Stephanie Meyer meets somebody who actually writes entertaining books with his own unique little downer-esque flair. Find out more about Jack Casey Books at the aptly named jackcaseybooks.com. Once again, that is jackcaseybooks.com.
Dona eis requiem Mises Caucus, oh be praised. Michael highs forever and a day. Amen. Brothers and sisters, we have gathered today to have a very serious conversation about the Mises Caucus, and we will get to that momentarily. I'll give you a few moments to go out and tell people what they're missing right now. Let's get weird.
The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Remember a simpler time when it was okay to be weird, have fun, and think for yourself?
Well, those days are over. The art of conversation itself is dead. Sacrificed on the altar of divide and conquer and disguised as political correctness and spared feelings. I believe that unity can only come from truth, and that the only way to find truth is by exploring and embracing our valuable differences and having civil, open-minded, and uncomfortable discourse. Conspiracies, politics, religion, and all the taboo topics your family just praise you don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table. We are here to literally change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. So if you're easily offended, put your big girl panties on and buckle up, Buttercup, because you chose to be here. I'm Dan Smots, you are the power, and this is The System is Down.
All right, boys and girls, welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web. It's The System is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics like conspiracies, politics, religion, and cults, and all sorts of fun stuff. And like I said, we have a great one for you today. Kill the music. It's very distracting. Thank you. Yeah, we've got a fun one for you today. I can only imagine. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet, but it's going to be, I promise. Before we get into it, I got to remind you guys about yourselves in the Downers Club. People like Donald Villa. That's a real name. Zach, Hugh something. Tom, Gid Kid, Chris, Alex, Magoo, Break the Bell, Gigi Vaughn, Lisa Debus, Cole, Hefflem's Woozles, Representation 0, Level 0, Carolina B, Ryan Mortensen, Anthony Meyer, Mitchell something, Michael Mitchell something, Mankiewicz. If you want to get your name on that list and possibly have it read incorrectly, go on over to patreon.com/The System is Down and sign up for the Downers Club today. Get more weird, more raw, more offensive, more weekly content. Bonus episodes of the show, after parties, all sorts of fun things. There isn't going to be one today, but Wednesday and every other day and stuff. Get the extended episodes, the extended interviews, and all that fun stuff at patreon.com/The System is Down, because YouTube hates me, and they don't like me to make money off of the things that I do on their platform. So you can support me for as little as one super chat per month and get all that fun stuff. Go find out. All right, guys, boys, girls, ladies, gentlemen, brothers, sisters. This is the buzz going around for some reason, and I figured I'd have a couple guys on to talk to about it. Two guys that I have talked to and two guys that I'm friends with that are on completely polar opposite ends of this debate and this argument or what have you, and they are the one and the only Clint Russell and the one and only Hodey John from Liberty Lockdown. Clint, and we are libertarians, the enemy of my enemy, Hodey John. Two white, straight, bald dudes with goatees. Who more qualified to talk about such controversial topics than two straight white dudes? How are you guys doing?
Fantastic! I couldn't be better, man. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome talking to you both.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Or should I say brother? Thank you for having me, brother.
Amen. Amen. And also with you. So this is going to be a debate of sorts. I don't really have like super laid out plans here or anything, but I do have. I did prepare. If somebody's going over time, if somebody's talking way too much, we can always switch to the handy bell cam, and you will be alerted that you are going over time by the bell cam. So if
Ryan Dawson approves. I like it.
It is a different bell, completely different, has nothing to do with Ryan Dawson, I assure you. And he has nothing to do with this conversation so far. So we are going to just hop in. If you guys see the bell cam come on, that means it's coming. I mean, you can keep talking until the bell rings, but it's about to happen, and you've been warned that you have maybe, 20, 15, something seconds until you will be severed from your time. Now, let's start with Clint. Hodey is the one who made the accusation about the Mises Caucus being a cult. That is the topic of discussion for anybody that hasn't seen, the title of the episode or anything. Clint, you are a part of the Mises Caucus, and I know that you probably have not that much to say here in your opening argument. So feel free to give your first thoughts.
Thank you, Dan. I'll be brief. The Mises Caucus is not a cult. I yield my time. Thank you.
All right. Now, moving on to Hodey John. That is the only thing we had planned. We didn't collude or anything in these things. Clint just said, I don't really have an opening statement. So
no, I don't. This is I'm on the defense here, so I have to hear the accusations first.
Right. Yeah. Hodey, you raised some concerns around the Mises Caucus, and you made a post that raised some controversy. You've done one other debate, and for the people that haven't seen those things or have missed it, give a little bit of background on you and why you've come to, what your stance is on the Mises Caucus and opening statements, I suppose.
Sure. Well, in the sake of fairness, I mean, Clint was so nice to me. I guess I should say it is a cult and yield the rest of my time. But I won't, because I'm not I'm not as much of a gent as Clint
Show's
is.
over, guys. Thanks for watching.
No, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say a lot of stuff here, and then I want Clint to get a chance to respond to all of it, give him equal to or greater than the amount of time that I'm going to take here, because I do kind of want to lay it out first and then hear him kind of go piece by piece and take it all apart, because that's what I'm here for. You know, I did have to take down my shrine to the Fakertarians in the back, so I apologize for not having something cool back there. I think to one up
your shrine to the Fakertarians in the back.
Yeah, well, you know, I had to take it down, but after Dan's intro, I feel like I need to put it back up and get John Hudak over here so I can like make out with him for 20 minutes. I think that's the only way I'm going to be able to balance the.
That would
the
prove definitively that the Mises Caucus is a cult.
That's right. And I am absolutely not in a cult. You know,
you're having sex with Fakertarians on cam. Okay. No, hey, instead of giving me your whole list, how about we go one by one? Would you mind?
Yeah, sure. So my first point is one I think you're going to like. I won't dismiss any bad behavior from outside of the LPMC. And I feel like this is something that a lot of people that go against the LPMC fail to do. Like, you cannot talk about how people need to block or not be friends with Dave Smith and have Jackie Perry on your friends list. You can't, right? Like, I mean, this is somebody who will talk to... If you have a family member who died of COVID and was unvaccinated, she'll laugh at your family members while they are grieving. And I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not like I have one example. I mean, you have people that say, well, I was in the Mises Caucus when it first started to get rid of Sarwark, and then I dropped out when it became something terrible. So now next on my show, here's Nick Sarwark, who's now my best friend. I'm going to tell you all about it. And I'm just like, dude, what are you guys doing? You know, the Libertarian Party Audacious Caucus. I mean, gosh, I have either blocked or am blocked by half of them. I do have some that are still good friends to this day, and that's fine.
So what you're saying is you're a very unlikable guy just all around.
Yeah, right. Like right. I mean, the funny thing is, before this whole incident, I mean, I'm not going to say that I was ever like an LPMC like stan or anything, but
I'm joking, by the way. And
I do want
to interject here. I want to make it clear that there's no secret that I am like a supporter of the Mises Caucus. Hodey and I had a conversation, long conversation, like a week ago about this stuff off air and everything. So like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm completely unbiased here. And the jokes are all meant in good fun. But continue.
It's important for me, when you're talking with somebody, it's important that they know that you can phrase their concerns in your voice, right? To say that I understand you. And I want to make sure that I get this right. So if there's something I miss that you say, I just don't feel like you've acknowledged that enough, because that's often a valid criticism about many people who criticize the Mises Caucus, is it's just like, well, sure, you show up when, this anti-trans meme show up, but where are you when somebody showed like an ANCAP like getting lynched, right? Like, that's when you decide to peace out. Now, I've spoken about all kinds of stuff here, and I don't want to be that guy who's just like Dave Smith, Michael Heiss, Tom Woods, these are my mortal enemies. And, everybody, Mike Shipley's so amazing. Oh, Jeff Wood, he's so incredible. Now, these are people I have called out and blocked as like, my bridges are so burnt with them as well. And there's times when you just need to say that, like, I am trying to be as even as I can here. And I want to make sure that comes across. So that's my first point. And I'm aware that it's kind of a point in your favor, but I'm making it so that you kind of get a feel of where I'm at headspace wise. I am not one of these trigger folks that exist to follow Clinton around. Every time Clint says something bad, I get a little screen cap and I save 100 of them. And, the first time Clint says something I disagree with, I'm going to talk about how his daughter should disown him or something.
That would be your buddy, John Hudak, that does that. I don't think that it sounds as if you were kind of on the defensive for that first point. So I think you're trying to explain that you're not just a biased hater, essentially. And I'll take your word for it. I mean, I don't know you well enough to say one way or the other, but I really don't have anything to, I don't have a rejoinder to that other than to say, I appreciate that you're trying to, hold all sides accountable. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, and I chose you guys both because I feel like you will both come in good faith. I know there's a lot of Mises detractors, and I have failed to see all that many of them that come to these discussions and these debates in good faith. And Hodey, you made one of the strongest accusations with the cult post, just outright, and people know that you're usually a pretty laid back and chill guy. So do you want to explain the post a little bit?
Yeah. You know what? I have another kind of positive bridge building thing, but I'll save that for the end. I think that'll be pleasant to save at the end. So let's get into the nasty, you guys are ugly business here. Okay, so this kind of came to a head, obviously, with the Tom Woods stuff, and it was something that I had been seeing for a while, and I will talk about other instances that I have before the Tom Woods stuff, but I didn't see it then. Now, with the Tom Woods, you can call him accusation. I'll just say the incident, I guess, like the whole incident. I think for me, I look at it and I'm just like, oh, damn, that sucks. Like, I initially am in all these posts because I said, that can't be true, right? Like, no way. And then, when two family members come forward and like the story changes and it's changed, you got to use a Wayback Machine to find the original stuff. And then
who are the two family members that have came forward? I only saw the sister.
There are two sisters now. There's one who said, there's Tracy. And then the other one's like, hey, yeah, Tracy is my sister. And she's telling the truth.
Are these still anonymous Twitter accounts? Cause I don't know these people. Like, I'm just trying to verify that this is legitimate.
I don't have their ID. She was able to produce a picture of, Tom and Heather that she had in her possession.
Yeah, that one sister did, but I'm saying the person that came out to say I'm also her sister, and I agree with this. I've never seen that, so that's why I'm asking.
Tracy, I don't remember if she said something, but liked it, I guess. So if somebody is not actually your sister is like, yeah, you're right. I guess you might still like it to win the argument, but you're kind of.
Sorry, I'm not deep in the weeds here. So is Tracy's Tom's ex-wife?
No, Heather's the ex-wife. Tracy is Heather's sister. Yeah,
got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So like for me, like all this comes forward and I initially am like, no way. Like, I mean, it occurred in a really random post. It wasn't even an original post, it was, Alec and, this is somebody who's always hated the Mises Caucus. And so I'm just kind of like, whatever, when it comes up, that's what it is. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to say that this is conclusive enough evidence. That's not my point here. Because I actually changed my mind a lot on this when I listened to you guys talk about it on the show. Because you had a very consistent opinion, which was if he did this, then that sucks. And it's valid to talk about it. In fact, you were very critical of the people who took down the post or, didn't want to talk about it or were detracting from it. And it was one of the things that helped me say, like, I could have been wrong about this cult thing because obviously you have no problem talking about it when my experience up to that point before hearing you guys talk about it was this person's fat, this person's a loser, this person hasn't accomplished anything, ignore them, this can't be true, none of this is true, Tracy's a Ukrainian bot, and I'm just like, okay, like, but there is some point where I gotta be like, I gotta open my eyes, and for me, I was looking at a lot of this and I was like, now it's convincing for me, but it's okay if it's not convincing for you, but don't pretend that you don't care. And don't pretend that it's okay, right? Like, I think you guys even said on the show, like, call him a pedo, throw him in the wood chipper, right? If it ends up being true. And I was like, you know what? Like, that's kind of what I've been waiting for because my experience up to this, including that post, you'll find I had a couple of posts about it, but you'll find some people who say simultaneously, I don't care. And these people will post that on like, the marked safe from caring about Tom Wood's personal life meme. You'll see that on like 200 posts, right? They'll post on everybody's that they need to tell everybody how much they don't care every time they see it come up, which I got bad news. If you're doing that, you might care. Secondly, they said, well, okay, so not only do I not care, but also it can't be true. I've dug deep into the evidence and there's absolutely no way, like you guys are pulling this out of your butts. There's no way it can be true. And then third, if it is true, it's okay. Like I kind of don't care if it is true. And I had somebody on the post literally do all three in the same post, like say, I don't care and it can't be true. And if it is true, I'm cool with it. And I was just like, you can't hold all three of these positions at the same time. Now, one person might hold any one position. You can not care and walk away. Okay. You can say it's not true, hasn't met the threshold of what I consider valid in my mind. Okay. Or you can say it's gross, right? Like even if the rest, you don't know what happened, you can just say at least dating a 15-year-old as a 26-year-old, not telling their parents about it, it's gross. Like if that ends up being true. When you kind of go through all those, you're trying to win at all costs. And it gave me this, like, it just seemed very cult-like because it like, what reality are you living in where all these three things in your own head can be simultaneously true? And I'll let Clint kind of address that because that's kind of all I had about the Tom Wood stuff.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying I think that when you're dealing with a accusation, it's natural that people are going to look at all angles of it and say, well, if it is true, this is how I feel about it. If it's not true, this is how I feel about it. If it's partially true, but not nearly as egregious as being alleged, this is how I feel about it. I mean, we are dealing with what amounts to a hypothetical. I mean, because we don't know. At least I feel like I don't know. You obviously have come to a conclusion that you think that it's at least probable. I don't know. So I don't view people coming up with these different takes as them saying, well, unless they say, well, if it were true and I'm totally fine with it, well, then I guess just shut up. Like, I don't know why you're even commenting at that point because you don't see anything here. But I don't view that as cult-like behavior as much as like we're autistic libertarians and we're trying to come up with a response to what's transpiring in front of us. And we have limited information and we know that the accusers are they have a vendetta against the Mises Caucus as well as Tom Woods in particular. So that's kind of my position on it is like, I never viewed that as cult-like behavior or any sort of like concerted effort to run cover for Tom as much as like what I saw the majority of the time was people saying, we don't have enough information and we probably shouldn't be taking, a little breadcrumbs from a bunch of guys whose reputation is in the gutter rightfully. And I think that's more the position I at least took with it. And that's the position I saw from a lot of people.
Yeah, let me. So I'll back that up with another piece of information, and maybe you can shed
Sure.
some light on how it's not, how it maybe makes sense of it. So, one of the people that commented, because I told the story about my friend, he had trans friends. I was at his wedding, gay friends, and that's fine, right? Like, I mean, even if he didn't, whatever, he's a person. He had those friends, a few years ago, and I was at his wedding. It was great. And now today he's kind of gotten to this place where he's like, well, I don't, believe like gay or trans people would exist unless they were indoctrinated. And somebody was like, dude, that's just F and BS. Like, there's no way your friend said that. Is that what you just heard? And I admit I'm susceptible to that. Like, I've heard somebody say, like, who cares about trans issues before, and I hear like, that sounds to me like you don't care about trans rights. And like, one is obviously more egregious than the other, but I'll admit when I make a mistake, if I just didn't hear you quite as right as I should have. But I actually did find the quote, from my friend here, and like,
Just so I understand why this is relevant, is this a Mises Caucus member? Why are we talking about it?
So that's actually another point I have here, and it's kind of one of the nice points. I did not know all the people. There are people who are Mises friendly, and there are people in the Mises Caucus, and I'll be honest, I can't tell the difference because I'm just online. I don't
Okay.
know, right? Like,
Okay.
he's Mises
But
friendly.
but you think that they have some sort of affiliation. I was just trying to
Yeah.
wonder like why it's at all relevant. So I get it.
Yeah, like, this is, so he is, and if this is what he is, so what he said, just word for word, I don't want to take anything out of it. There's a trans person says, you can't restrict us from talking about sex with your kids. The other person says, why? Will people like you go extinct if you can't groom kids? Oh, wait. And then talking with him personally, this is how he feels. Now, here's the thing. We went from denying that that's like, that no way that person could have said that. Okay, he said it. I talked to him. He feels that way. And then person responded when I made this quote and said, don't most people feel this way now? And it's like, well, either no way some human being would ever say that, or he said it and you agree with him. Like, what happened at the step in between to being like, okay, he said it and that's gross, right? Like, I think for me, there's kind of a missing step there where I'm just like, you can't have it both ways to be like, oh, what he said was based, and also he never said that. Like, to me, I just need to acknowledge at some point something, the in-between point here, right? Like, these are the words, you literally quoted them. I had to screenshot it and everything because people were like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, okay, well, here it is, and now apparently it's okay. Like,
There's
I
this
just don't
weird
understand.
there's this weird dichotomy that I find your camp having, where it's like the tolerance is the highest priority almost, and yet you guys don't have any tolerance for people as they're dealing with emotions, as they uncover that there's been this concerted propagandistic effort amongst elementary school kids to teach them about this stuff. So like, I'm not saying that they're right, but I can understand why, like, in the heat of battle, someone might say something that comes across a little bit, illiberal, intolerant.
Sure.
I don't really view that as like such an egregious statement that they should be excommunicated from society. Speaking of cults,
No, me neither.
I tend to accept that a lot of people, especially online, which it sounds like you were reading something online. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In
So
person, I have very little. Like, yeah.
yeah. So when I see stuff online, I tend to take it with a grain of salt unless it seems like a declarative statement, in which case I'm like, okay, well, that I strongly disagree with this person in this particular area. That to me sounds like, he's saying, or she, I don't even know, that the grooming aspect that people have described as what's happening in some elementary schools in this country is certainly bolstering the number of transgender people in this country. I mean, it is happening. We have statistics that show that a skyrocketing percentage of kids either consider themselves non-binary or trans. And I think it's fair to question whether or not all those people are. In fact, you have trans people that question that once they grow up and they realize that they're not trans. So it's a very sensitive subject. It's very like, it's kind of a developing story, and I have a lot more tolerance for people as they try and figure out how they actually feel about all this stuff, because I feel like I'm trying to figure it out myself.
Sure. This gets more into like points of agreement. Like, I think there's a lot of toss him out, get rid of him. Like,
Right.
even if all this Tom Wood stuff ends up being true, if he didn't know it was wrong at the time or felt justified at the time and has learned better, welcome. Like, what, we all, whatever, and I didn't unfriend this friend because I know them. They weren't being, usually my blocking point is when you start being like hateful to other people, right? Like, put me on like a get rid of him bingo card, and I like, it's hilarious, right? Like, it's just funny, you're having fun. Obviously, if I'm going to be able to call somebody a cultist, I need to be able to take a little bit, right? Like, that's just the way it goes. So obviously there's some of that, but there's a lot of, I think for me, I'm like, where, like, this guy didn't get any pushback for that. Now, we might say we disagree with him, and like you said, maybe disagree with him strongly, but I'm like, I kind of want to, like, I don't see enough of it, and maybe that's me and just my perspective, and it is online. I don't know how much of that is real. I've been told there's a lot of pushback behind the scenes that I don't get to see. I have a good friend, Jacob, who is kind of the hammer dude, I guess, for the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. And if somebody needs to go, he's the guy who's like, hey, it's time for this to go. Is there a time when somebody's unsalvageable? Yeah. But I would like to push that as far out as I possibly can. I don't want to kick. Let me make this very clear. I don't want to kick. I feel the same way about socialists as I do about bigots. I don't want to kick them out. I want to make them libertarians, right? Like, I'm not over here trying to say like, this is you violated the one law that I can't, it's not like that. I want, if we have that where we start making, you can't be part of this unless you do this, nobody's going to join. We are vastly outnumbered. This is a very small anthill we got right now. If we want this anthill to grow, we're going to have to work on our conversion tactics and not our cast out tactics.
Well, you and I agree on that fully. And as a member of Tower Gang, let me tell you, I joke about things that are very inappropriate, and all of the people that I run with do the same. And I find that it is bringing people in that are not, wouldn't consider themselves libertarians. So there are strengths. Same with Dave Smith with Legion of Skanks. He's converted probably thousands of people into libertarian because they're diehard Legion of Skanks fans, and they can just kind of glean what he's about, and then they hop over to Part of the Problem, and all of a sudden they start reading Rothbard. Like this, there is a pipeline here, and it's funny because oftentimes when people talk about the pipeline, it's the Dave Smith to alt-right pipeline, and I find it to be completely the opposite, because you have all of these fringe elements, these kind of like outcast, like suburban kids that start listening to Legion of Skanks, and maybe they would have gone down a dark path, and now they're in the Ron Paul wing of libertarianism. And I think that's tremendous progress. And so, yeah, I'm glad to hear that you feel that way. And I tend to feel the same. I'm not really interested in kicking people out as much as I am in converting them, so to speak, not to get too cult-like in my conversation. But so, yeah.
Oh, it's too late. You got it. I got the soundbite. It's good. Dan, go.
So, I just want to weigh in because now we're going back and forth about, who should be allowed in, who should not be allowed in. It seems like we both agree on that point. And Clint seems to lean more towards let them all do what they want kind of thing. And correct me if I'm wrong to either of you, but Hodey, you're the one saying that let them all stay, but also you guys are a cult, and I condemn you for this, which is, it's a little bit less inclusive, I would say.
Yes.
Let me ask a question that kind of answers this, and I want a genuine answer because I don't know. What do you do when you have these people that come in and they say, well, here's the thing, I'm here, but it's got to be closed borders, or we got to be anti-trans. Like, I will never call somebody, like, we got to make sure, no transitioning is happening here, or I want to make sure that, like, they have some fundamentally unlibertarian thing, right? Like, I am fine with recruiting people from the Bernie rallies, and Dan, I know you've seen plenty of this with Spike and Vermin, right? Like, sure. Recruit people from the Bernie rallies, but then get them to see how government healthcare sucks, right? Like, I think for me, what I want to see is the process of being like, hey, here's why government borders sucks. Like, I'm going to take somebody who might be closed borders, witness to them, absolutely, and be like, you know what? Yeah, I think you have a place here in the Libertarian Party, but let me explain why your border position might be wrong, and like work on that. And I think my question is, how do you see the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus working on these people to make them libertarians? Because for me, that's the big key here. Is I want to see, I am fine with the wrong people being here and being recruited, as long as we're turning them into libertarians and not encouraging them to bring their statism into liberty and having the Liberty Party become about statism.
Well, what makes you think that that's such a significant problem? And then I'll answer.
The borders?
Oh, so the borders. Well, then I'm going to give you a very unpopular answer for your camp. I don't think that having a closed border stance, as long as we still have public property, is an unlibertarian position.
Do not start a completely different debate here, guys. Stay on
well,
target.
and I don't intend to hash this out with you, but I don't think that that's a reason that someone can't classify themselves as a libertarian. We are still a national party, and with a nation comes borders. So it's like, it's kind of hard to have a hard and fast rule in that regard. And I think that it's been a mistake, and it has pushed out a tremendous amount of people because this topic is so divisive. I think that there's very valid libertarian arguments on both sides of that debate. And I don't think that that's a reason to push people out. Now, if you want to get into the bigot conversation, I forget what the plank is, but we find bigotry irrational, repugnant.
Republican?
Is that, yeah, and Republican? is that the platform? I forget the words.
You got it right. We find bigotry to be irrational and repugnant. Pretty sure you got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it is. I think it is, but I also don't think it's exactly a brave stance or something that's necessary to be in a political platform. Personally, I find that the people that come to libertarianism have already kind of figured out that the state is the problem. Like, why? It's always fascinating when people talk about, like, how are we going to make sure that the people within the Libertarian Party are not some crazy racist, statists? And it's like, well, how did we get them here in the first place? Like, they have to have listened to I'm sure the biggest conversion mechanism has been podcasts over the past decade. And I can't imagine that someone's listening to Tom Woods or Dave Smith and they're coming in to the Libertarian Party going, I hate black people. That's why I'm here.
Sure.
It just doesn't make any sense to me that's like it, but it does feel as if our detractors feel as if that's the case. And as someone who's listened to Dave for the past decade, I don't understand it. So can you explain to me why you feel that way? Like, are we really getting inundated with a bunch of people with deeply bigoted ideology that you're super concerned about? Or is it shit posters online that rub you the wrong way with their sense of humor? Because I certainly see that, but I as someone who's, interacted with all these people for quite a long time now, I honestly do not encounter legitimate racism, like where they actually are being sincere about it. I see jokes because we're not allowed to make them, and we like to do that, but that's about it.
And I'm kind of the stick in the mud on that, because I've had a lot of these guys on. I've had some of the Tower Power Hour guys on, and I'm like, just to be clear, you're not really racist, right? And they're like, no, of course not. Like, I think there's a lot online, like a lot of it's inside jokes and a lot of just bullshitting around on Twitter. But sorry, don't want to make your point here, but just to say, I've interacted. I've had the same experience as Clint. I've still have yet to meet one of these, bigots in the Mises Caucus personally.
So my post, great place to start. I do have somebody on there that was like, hey, I won't call trans people by whatever new name they have. I will dead name them. I won't use whatever preferred pronouns they have. And I was just like, hey, you're in the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. Like, do you dead name the people in the Mises Caucus? And they're like, we don't have them. F you, right? Like, you're like idiot, whatever. And then, block me or whatever. And that's fine. I mean, hey, I block people too. Believe me, we're not even going to get into that. If that's a sin, I am the guiltiest sinner of all. If you're not having a good interaction with me, fine, right? Like, I'm not going to get my panties in a bunch. But, my issue here was we don't have you're a libtard, you're an idiot, and I had 3 people message me after that and say like, hey, just so you know, in the Mises Caucus, we don't dead name people. Like, we do give them their preferred pronouns, and I'm like, that's cool, but why can't you say that in public? Like, what's the for me, that's another kind of like the cult-like behavior, because if you feel a certain way, then say it, right? If you find the way somebody was treated to be repugnant or bad, or if you find somebody spouting off bigotry, you just kind of say, I'm not saying you need to go seek it out, but if you see somebody saying it, you're just like, hey, F you, by the way, like, please stop. You know what I mean? Like, if I see one of my friends going off about, I just did this the other day, talking about how like maybe the one thing libertarians can give in on is nationalized, socialized healthcare. There is very few things that have damaged me personally more than nationalized healthcare. And like even the hybrid situation that we're in, cronyized, awful situation that we're in, would get a lot worse if it were fully nationalized and fully socialized. And I would expect that somebody who saw something like that I'm just like, nah, that's not cool, to get ripped apart, as they should, and maybe not ripped apart in the sense that you're casting them off, but enlightening them and saying, hey, just so you know, this is what happened to me personally, and you should understand that these are my experiences before you go forward. And I got through to that person. Like, obviously there's some people that you can't get through to. I do want people like that in the Libertarian Party so that I can have these kinds of conversations, just like I want people in the Libertarian Party who may be bigots, so that I can have these conversations to try and fix that. Now, as far as, is that a big issue that we need to be fixed? I don't want people to take my word for it. Look at my skin over here. I'm like the crackerest cracker of all, right? Like, I'm the king of the crackers. But if let's just say, Latina woman comes forward and says, I don't feel safe in the party because, of these comments, and there's people that have said things and my race has come into it, and somebody responds, oh, that's because your race is the most interesting thing about you. It's just like, okay, well, she's giving you a legitimate feeling that she has, and you just kind of want to blow it up in her face. And I'm told that there was blowback behind the scenes for comments like that, but I don't see it. Like, this is all I know. And for me, the whole, it's okay in public, but behind the scenes, whatever. I guess I get criticizing in private, but it's not like the tweet's deleted or anything. Like, and it's not like, even somebody could come by and be like, hey, just so you know, like, that's not cool, man. We don't talk about somebody like that, especially somebody who used to be a friend, somebody who has been repping anti-communism and talking about how communist dictatorships tear lives apart, and she lived from that experience, and then say, well, we like your experience when you're talking about how communism sucks, but I don't like your experience when you're talking about how you feel like you're in danger because of your race. Like, well, you either accept her perspective or you don't, right?
No, I don't. Knowing the people that she was interacting with in the Florida Mises Caucus, many of them Hispanic, by the way, and alleging that it's like this fraternity of white college kids is just detached from reality. And I was being DM'd by these guys that are in the Florida Mises Caucus saying exactly what they had offered her in her claims of not being offered anything at the convention. And I found her claims wanting, just to be blunt. And I don't really want to get into the weeds on this because I don't even know what's private and what's public. But it's like, someone can be right about one thing and not right about everything. And you can respect her perspective as to, feeling as if she's not safe because she's a Hispanic woman in this party. But I know a lot of Hispanic women that are in this party that feel totally safe. So do I not respect their opinions?
Are we talking about Top Lobster here? Is he even white?
Yeah. And no, he's not. Well, yeah, he's like, I think he's half Puerto Rican, and he's also not in the Mises Caucus, but it doesn't matter. I'll stick up for his insane takes online. The dude's a fucking maniac. And I love the guy. So, that doesn't mean he's right about everything. And I think that he crosses the line a lot, and he does it intentionally because, and this is part of the reason that he's not in the Mises Caucus, is because he doesn't want to be told what to do. He's a total fucking maniac and a free spirit. And, he's going to pick fights with people sometimes. And I think that more than anything, he's trying to stick up for Josh Smith, who he feels was wronged in the party and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that either because it's too much in the weeds. But anyways, I think that these examples you're bringing up, they turn into something that seems really big, and they're not. And I as someone who's actually interacting with these people like on the ground, when you go and you talk to these people, there was no racism involved at all in her quote unquote mistreatment. It's just factually wrong. So she can feel that way. She can, but I think she's wrong. And I like her and I respect her, but I think she's wrong.
Okay. So I guess it's hard for me to factually, like, when I see somebody say something racist to her and then be like, well, it's not a problem. I'm like, well, that seems like a problem to me. I guess we can talk. Are we debating like this?
Like, you know, like,
I mean, to just say that, like, you're what? I mean, obviously, there's the most interesting thing about you is your race, but you know, I mean, other stuff. And again, I can't tell who is a stock account or who is what's that.
Is that racist though, Hodey? I mean, what he's saying is that, I mean, it's an insult clearly, but he's saying that she's not interesting. That's what he's trying to say, and it's an insult clearly, but I don't see racism in that. Do you?
I guess, like, as far as racism in the dictionary definition of being like genetic superiority over another person, I guess not. As far as I guess I'll just leave it as I guess if we just want to leave it as like dickish, but then you get all the sock accounts that pile on.
It is dickish.
And it's just,
I don't think anybody's denying that. I don't even think he would deny that. That doesn't make
no,
it racist.
I mean,
it's overtly and intentionally dickish.
Right. I have a problem with people being dicks to get right. And so this is another issue we can talk about here is I do not like the tactic of being a dick to people you want gone until they leave, because as I opened up this show, I want more people, and I feel like we agreed on that, right? Like, so instead of casting people off, I want people brought in. I want people being convinced otherwise. You know, I don't want
a good way to bring people in is to not call the biggest, most motivated, passionate group of libertarians that are entering this party a cult, Hodey. So forgive me, but I do not take your allegations as being sincere. I simply do not. Like, you cannot call us a cult when we are growing the party more than any other sect within this ridiculousness and say that we are the ones that are pushing people away. It's like, you are calling us a cult, man. Come on. That's so ridiculous to say that. Anyways, go ahead.
There's a difference between cruelty and just and saying what I'm observing, right? Like, I think we can agree that you can say Martha Bueno was wrong in what she observed, right? You think she was wrong, but she can be genuinely wrong, and you just think that, you know, that she's just making stuff up out of thin air, but she might actually feel that way. Now, if I am wrong about the Mises Caucus being a cult, that's fine. I still have a lot of gripes. I don't believe, in fact, one of the most impressive things about this whole thing to me was the lack of death threats that I got from this. I had a lot of people that reached out to me after making this post that said, I want to talk to you. Like, hey, can we talk, man? I feel like we've gone certain ways. Like, you haven't seen, like, you're not seeing things the way I'm seeing it. Because what you see is, here's a lie Michael Heiss told, F Michael Heiss. And what I'm saying is, maybe he told that lie, but here's also a ton of good stuff that he's done for me, my family. Do you think I care that he told like a lie about who he conversed with when he's converted so many people to liberty? Well, no, of course. Like, yeah, I wouldn't expect you to care. If he's helped you pay your rent when you fell behind, that's a great thing for him to do. And I'm not going to condemn the whole of him because my experience with him was crap.
Wait,
right?
Is this the Adam Kokesh situation, or is this a different lie that Michael?
No, this is the We're Libertarian situation. He said like Chris, you know, talk smack about the Mises Caucus, and Chris is like, I haven't talked to you since, and you know, had to show is like, you know, here's the last time we called. Here's the last time we met in person. Here's the text I have from your number. We haven't spoken. I don't even know why you're saying this, right? And this is back when I wasn't a part of the Mises Caucus. I was supporting the Mises Caucus. You can check my profile. I definitely have the Joshua Smith for chair tag on there with the cute little porcupine. You know, back when I was still, you know, supportive of kind of the direction of it. Believe me, I went Nick Sarwark. When the whole block Nick Sarwark thing came up, I was like, oh gosh, thank you. Like it's time. It's time. Yeah. Right? Like he's run his course, right? Let's be done with him, you know, please.
So you do agree that dickishness is sometimes a good tact?
Is it dickish to block somebody?
I think if you tell everyone to block somebody, it's kind of dickish. Yeah.
No, if I tell people not to go drink poison, it's not dickish. If I tell them not to, and believe me, Nick Sarwark is
Hodey
poison.
compares
If I tell
talking to
people
Nick
not-
Sarwark to drinking
Absolutely.
poison.
The man is poison. I mean, oh gosh,
then
like
I agree with you on that.
you're right. Okay, right. So I at least I can have some amount of consistency here, right? Like, yes, there's a certain wisdom of just being like, hey, like I'm not going to do this. Now, as far as just like treating people like, crap or there's a lot of like belittling accomplishments and like dick measuring contests. Like, look how many people I brought in. Look how big my podcast is. Look how many Hayek lifetime achievement awards I have. And like, right, okay, politics. So fine, like, look at you, weak bitch pussy. You can't handle like my criticisms because I've done all these great things, and you're down here on the ground. Well, you know what? They don't ever bring up the work I did with the prisons, and that was published in the LP newsletter, right? I'm just I must be a loser. I must have accomplished absolutely nothing.
You got to understand is that when you attack the people that have brought in the most, they're going to have to bring that up, especially when your allegation is that they're going to be pushing people away. So, of course, you're putting them in the position to make that defense. That's not even their fault. They're going to have to say, yeah, I have 100,000 downloads every episode, and I've been on Joe Rogan 7 times. Like, I've talked to tens of millions of people, and I probably shed more light on the genocide in Yemen than any human being on Earth right now. Yeah, I like that. That is a natural response from someone who is actually making a difference in the world. For them to be accused of something like this, they're going to defend themselves. So I don't think they would have ever said that out of the blue.
So you said actually making a difference, right? So the work in the prisons, that's not an actual difference, right?
You know what I'm saying, man. I'm saying on a grand scale, a macro scale, he's actually making a big difference with the party. Your work could be great. I don't know anything about it. I commend you if you've made any reforms in the prisons. We desperately need it. But I'm talking macro.
Yeah, I mean, for me, yeah. As far as is my platform as big as his? Do I reach as many people as his? No. Do any of his listeners either? No. Right? Like, I mean, at some point you just got to like turn this around, just be like, look, there's a lot of people who haven't done the work, the amazing work that Dave Smith has done. Right. And I'm not going to, again, I want to stick to this first part here, because one of the biggest issues that I see is people want to toss out everything they learned from Dave Smith because they want you to toss it out because you learned it from Dave Smith. I have like a quote from Dave Smith that I posted on my wall that was like, that revolutions need to be based in love because the ones that are based in hate fall apart. I forget the exact wording, but I loved it, right? Like, this is the kind of stuff I want going around. Disagreements I may have with the guy and his tactics and everything, but I can get wisdom from him. I'm not going to deny all the great things that he's done, right? Like all the amazing things that Heiss has done, I would never deny him, because I think it's great to, when somebody's saying, hey, I'm struggling to make rent, to go out and say, I'm going to help you. I mean, that shows where your heart is at a lot more than making a stupid tweet, right? Like, absolutely, for sure, right? Like, put up or shut up, let your actions show. But when and this, I mean, this was brought up even before I'd say anything, but it was always, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. You're doing so little. Look, I don't feel that my work in the prisons was very little. I don't feel like the work we did with the homeless here in Ogden was very little. And you know what? Maybe it wasn't as macro as you want. You know what? Neither is like feeding my family. But usually these people who like to flex their balls and talk about how manly they are talking about how they take care of their families, right? Flexing them nuts, right? Nuts. They like to.
Hodey, I get your point, and I think you're totally right that like micro matters tremendously. But why were these people saying this to you? I find it extraordinarily hard to believe that people were just going, "Hey, guy that I hardly know, you're not doing enough." Like, why were they saying it to you? That's very weird.
Do you think this is the first time it's come up? The littleness that I've done? This has been reiterated over and over.
I wasn't even, who's bringing it up? I didn't even bring it up just now. Who's bringing it up to you?
Well, I mean, I think the littleness of anybody that is not, supporting the LPMC has been kind of a theme, right? For many years now, right? Like, if you're not...
But the littleness that they're referring to is in terms of actually converting non-believers, to bring it back to the cult language. And I think that they're right, that we have dropped the ball terribly over the past decade. When we had the most fertile ground to be converting people, we didn't do it. And we tried to go the leftist route of being the most tolerant, most woke party. And it fucking was a catastrophe, because they already have that. It's the Democrat Party. and they're awful.
But is it tolerant or woke when you're not calling out the COVID regime? Aren't the people who suffered the worst some of the people that the Democrats pretend to love the most? Right?
Yes,
Like that's
we didn't, but they didn't call out the COVID regime adequately either.
Right. Oh, the LN. Are we talking about the LNC sucking? Because if we're going to talk about that, the LNC sucks. If that's why I'm here is to defend the LNC, I concede the point. Because the LNC is terrible, right? Like,
but that's what they're talking about when they talk about how much they're doing versus how much has been done. I don't think that people are coming out of nowhere to you and just saying you haven't done anything. I mean, if they're making that statement, that's bizarre. I really don't know why that's happening, but I think you may be personalizing a statement that is a broad accusation of former or the old guard of the LNC not doing enough with the opportunity they had. And that is the reason that the LPMC exists, is because we saw that opportunity, they didn't capitalize it, and we're here to do that. So I just don't, you'll have to get into more details about who is actually saying that your work in the prisons or whatever hasn't been meaningful. I can't imagine that any LPMC member that I know would say that that's not meaningful. That seems crazy to me.
Right. So that's the point, right? The assumption, if you listen to, people who respond to this, is that I've done nothing, right? And it's that these people have
at
never
least they're
done
not calling you a Nazi.
The mental health, right? And you know what? Yeah. You know what? Is there I am not going to defend that kind of behavior either. Nazism is a very specific practice. Nationalist socialism is a terrible ideology and it deserves to be condemned at every step. I don't see a lot of people doing that.
Said you're going to make out with John Hodey.
I do see people. Oh, I'm joking, right? I do see people calling out the LPMC, right, for being Nazis, and you know what? That is messed. That's a great way to push somebody away, instead of draw them in. My goal isn't to say if you've ever listened to Tom Woods or Dave. I mean, I listen to Tom Woods and Dave Smith. I just there's this fantastic episode about from Dave Smith just the other day. Talking about on part of the problem, talking about the media and how they doxed the libs of TikTok person after this girl was just crying about like being in fear for her life, and it's a great thing to call out. My thing is I don't want to get into a dick measuring contest with these people because they are great and you do bring people in and that is great. My concern is that these people are not being turned into more libertarians. In fact, I am seeing people take a backslide. And I'm not trying to make everybody out to be Pete Q, right? Like he's an anomaly, right? Like Pete Q is his own shtick, right? He's the self-harm guy, but I do see people occasionally regurgitate his self-harm thing non-sarcastically, right? Like let's make the enemy self-harm themselves, and so that way they all kill themselves, and we're here at the end of the day and we win, And I'm just like, you guys, like that is not. It is not my. And maybe it's just an incompatibility of style, and you know what? If your style of this harshness is making the world freer, then great, but I can't argue with your results for recruitment. What I can argue is my experiences that I have in seeing people who were more libertarian drift into an area where they are less libertarian, drift in an area where they are strong about, hey, adults don't take kids, to maybe it's okay. Or, hey, like, maybe the borders, I don't know, I'm iffing, or no, close them down. I'm done with them. Or, maybe trans people deserve our love and respect too. Nah, there's no such thing as transgender. It's all gender dysphoria. Clint, you brought it up at the beginning of the show. Both things exist. I'm not trying to pull one example. Like there are nut people, out of their mind people on TikTok and social media that want to educate your kids, and they are the furthest person who should be educating your child, right? Like,
they're not just on social media. They are some of them are in your public schools doing exactly that. So I don't blame people for freaking out. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, you should absolutely be flipping out. There is of the Don't Say Gay bill, there's like there's probably like 3 bullet points that I think all libertarians would be like, yeah. Right now, the reason for a lot of libertarian opposition to those points usually isn't that, right? It's the other stuff. But what doesn't matter is what's getting tossed out here is it's all of a sudden, if you like are opposing this legislation, I mean, heck, must be a groomer, right? I mean, it's funny that we had this grooming accusation happen on the heels when we were talking about grooming as it pertains to our kids, and then all of a sudden some grooming comes up. It's like, well, here's somebody, dating an underage kid. And all of a sudden it's like, you know what though? I'm okay with that. And I'm like, what, dude, you got it. Like, where is your philosophy? Because for me, your philosophy isn't grounded on you don't groom kids. Your philosophy is you don't groom kids until my favorite podcaster does it, in which case then I'm okay. Like, get out of here, right? Like, and I understand if you didn't, like Clint and Dan, I understand you guys don't believe the accusations, and that's fine. But there are people who do acknowledge it and then go, oh, based, right? Like, cool, I'm okay with that. And I'm just like, guys,
isn't that
your
kind
philosophy
of like,
just last week
was
isn't
that more? Just give a little bit of pushback to the way I see it. Like, I know that people are going back and forth on this thing because nobody knows. None of us are in the situation, and we're kind of just like observing and taking things as they come. And a lot of people, sure, there is some hero worship, but like, if you have somebody that you're a fan of, you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt over somebody on the internet who's attacking them. So, like, opinions might change as things go on, and there might be jokes or people saying based or whatever. But I don't know. Clint, go ahead and rebut, and then we'll jump to an ad break here in a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you said that people calling us Nazis are making a very specific accusation, and that's not okay, and you wouldn't support that. But you're making a very specific accusation and calling us a cult, and once again, I find your argumentation disingenuous. Basically, if you're going to make that accusation, it has to be more than I see some things online that I don't like. There has. I have spoken out multiple times personally publicly against disagreements I've had with Dave. So like, that's not cult-like behavior. And I don't think anyone has done more to get my show off the ground than Dave. So it's just, in my experience, I flatly don't see it. I do not see cult-like behavior. I completely grant you that there is going to be, Dan referred to it as hero worship. I would say it's more along the lines, in my estimation, of basing your current assessment off of track record. You have scumbags that hate all of us that come out of nowhere while grooming is in the news cycle, and then they all of a sudden have this entire hit piece ready to go against Tom, and it has to do with grooming. And I'm like, well, maybe it's legitimate, maybe, but guess what? I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the guy who doesn't think I'm a piece of shit just because I'm the Mises Caucus, Like, that's just human nature. And I think that any like reasonable person that doesn't have all of the information is going to say, I'm going to wait to see, and a lot of people are like, well, why aren't you coming out and saying something against Tom? It's like, because I don't fucking know. It's very simple. If I knew, I would have a much different opinion on this, but I don't. And that was what I did a whole thread on, was just like pleading with people to have patience in all this. It's like, this accusation is very severe. He's had a very respectable long career, and I think he's earned that. I think anybody that's done that has earned that. So that I just hate the entire story. It drives me crazy that it was such a big part of our sphere for 2 weeks when we really don't know the truth. And ultimately, we also don't know that the alleged victim wants this to be out there. And I think that that's what makes my skin crawl more than probably anything else, is that his ex-wife, we have no idea how she feels about this, how she feels about how her now ex-husband, the father of her 4 or 5 or however many kids, feels about this. So like, I just don't know how I'm supposed to possibly believe that these people are concerned with the victim, which is what you should be concerned with if you actually think she is one. So I don't trust these people. I don't believe them at all. And if there's information that comes out that smoking guns style, I'll reassess. But until then, I am fucking biting my tongue and moving on with my life, because there's way bigger demons to slay.
Yeah, and it's a really serious issue, and demon slaying is all good and well. But you know what else is serious? Cybersecurity.
Paul was in New Hampshire today to plug for conservative support. In Massachusetts, he appealed to the liberal voter. As Matt Martin...
You know what's really dangerous? Cybersecurity. Take 2.
Today's episode is sponsored by Astero's Cybersecurity Services. These days, organizations of all sizes are targets for cyber criminals, disgruntled employees, or even nation-state attackers. Astero's performs cybersecurity services providing expert guidance to help organizations defend against threats and protect their data. Astero specializes in penetration testing, where they perform ethical hacking on networks, web apps, or organizations as a whole to simulate what an attacker would do and plug the discovered holes before anyone malicious finds and exploits them. Asteros also specializes in vulnerability management, security awareness training, phishing simulations, cloud security audits, compliance readiness assessments, and much more. As technology expands, it becomes easier and easier to run a business, but if your security is not growing along with your company, then you're going to run into problems. If you don't personally have a company of your own, definitely pass this information along to someone who does, because for a limited time, Asteros is offering companies an attack surface audit completely free. Let Asteros discover potential entry points to your network and how susceptible your company or organization is to cyber attacks. To learn more and to take advantage of this essential offer, just go to asteros.com/free. That's Asteros, ASTEROS.com/free.
Thank you, Asteros, and all that fun stuff. Maybe it wasn't the best place to add, to have something about penetration testing and whatnot at this point in the conversation. But Hodey, do you want to go ahead and respond to whatever Clint just said?
Yeah, all that stuff. I was zoning out. So let me be very specific about the cult thing, right? So one of the unfortunate, I'll even say personal mistakes that I made. Cult has a very broad usage, right? Like there is, if you look up what is a cult, you'll have like this guy's 8 points versus this guy's 13 points versus this person 3 points. And, you know, like it's a broad accusation. And I think for me, the reason I used the term was because I saw people who weren't living in reality and they would do anything to defend something. Like their principles had gone out the window. You know, like I can appreciate what Clint is saying, because what he says is if this ends up being true, throw him in the wood chipper, let's move on. But there are some people who said, no. Well, actually, okay.
Well, let me like, clarify.
You know, where's Arvin Vora? You know,
I've never been one of the wood chipper people, just to be clear. I did not say that about Tom. So, I mean,
who made the wood chipper comment on the show? Maybe it wasn't you, but
it might have been Dave. No. I'm not sure.
I'm
not a big wood chipper. You know, I don't use that too often myself either, because a lot of these things are a conversation.
Even the most egregious accusation against Tom is that he dated her and then they got married and didn't have sex until their wedding night when she was 19 years old. I'm sorry, but that is not wood chipper worthy. Like, you could say it's wrong, you could say it's immoral. I don't even think it's criminal, honestly. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's certainly not wood chipper level.
Well, people have been talking about giving the wood chipper to anybody who opposed DeSantis, right? Or anybody who opposed the Don't Say Gay bill. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, wood chipper don't care, wood chipper go brr, you know? And you're like, okay, well,
I think
if
that's
probably that around, then
I think it's probably hyperbole. But yes, I get your point. Yeah.
Sure,
I'm not one,
right.
and for the record, I'm also not one of those people. I don't say wood
Sure.
chipper if you oppose the Don't Say Gay bill or any of that.
Also,
Right,
real quick, guys in the comments, leave if you have a question or a super chat. I don't take actual super chats because YouTube hates me, but if you put fake super chat in all caps, we will try to get some questions at the end. So if you guys have any questions for these guys, we will address some of those later on, but mostly just letting you guys talk and do your thing. So Hodey, go ahead.
Perfect.
Cool. You know, so let me give you another example here. So we have somebody who makes the rounds. I actually said made the rounds, although I saw him in a libertarian circle the other day. But, you know, I don't believe he was ever Mises Caucus, just kind of a Mises friendly guy. But, you know, it came up that like he had used a Zyklon B thumbnail, right, in one of his videos. And was like, no, it didn't happen. Went on another LPMC show to say, there we go. That's who we're talking about. You know, was like, hey, you know, this never happened. Well, you can get in a Wayback Machine, right? Like anybody can get it and prove that it's wrong, right? At any time. You can just be like, was that the original thumbnail? Real easy to prove, right? So he gets on there. No, it didn't happen. No, it didn't happen. Now, of course, people who had the proof were like, here it is. Look at it. I don't want to look at it. Now, what happens when he said something bad about Dave Smith? Then the accusation became true. That's when when all of a sudden it was like, hey, you asshole, you used that Zyklon B thumbnail. Like, you son of a bitch. And it's like, okay, well, at what point then was it your standard for truth isn't the truth. It's how convenient it is, right? It's, I will accept this as this person was lying and this is the truth, but only after that person says something bad about Dave Smith. Or after, and that to me, it's, I don't want to, for me, it's not a cult of personality. Because I think Dave Smith said it best when he's like, I wish there was a cult of personality. People disagree with me. I wish I could tell them to knock off all the shit posting, and they don't, right? Like, it's not a cult of personality, right? It's a tribal cult, right? And so what we got here is somebody who's went against this guy that I really like, and the information presented against it wasn't true until I didn't like that guy. And that threshold, I'm like, you're not measuring truth. That's how I know you're not thinking about it rationally. It's the reason I bring up all the Tom Wood stuff. It's because the philosophy changed when they thought that maybe this could be true. And I think for me, I would like to see it. You know what? If Arvin Kavora convinced you that it's true, he makes very philosophical arguments. Okay. Maybe for some reason, Arvin got his hooks in you and you were like, you know what? Now all of a sudden I've changed my mind. Okay. You changed your mind. I might disagree with you, but you changed your mind. What changed their mind was somebody they like being associated with it. And I was just like, that to me isn't how a rational person changes their philosophy. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it makes sense. I think that your assessment may be a little off, though, in that I think the vast majority of people that are talking about, wood chipper memes usually mean, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, like child rapists. And it's not even if you're saying that, Tom's wife was too young to consent, which, I mean, she didn't consent until she was 19. So I don't even know if that's really the case here. But I think that you could just be looking at people going, yeah, I don't agree with wood chipping people when they date someone when they're 17, 18 and they get married when they're 19 and they have 5 kids and they're married for 15 years. Like that could be what you're seeing here. As for I assume you're referencing Ryan Dawson. I didn't even know that was a thumbnail he used, but just for the record, I am probably the least sensitive person you'll ever talk to, and I have no problem with him doing that. I don't know the context of it, but Tower Gang, we just had Zyklon Showers was our fucking our tournament on deciding which irritating person that exists on the planet is the most irritating. But it's all in good fun. It's all playful. So like, I don't know the context of it. If Dawson was coming out and actually demanding that there be a genocide of some group of people, I would disagree with him and I would oppose him strongly. And I literally had him on my show just yesterday. So so that puts me in a weird position, but I don't care. I would tell him that. And so your point though is well taken, that there's obviously going to be people that shift with the wind and they're not super principled people. That's going to happen. I'd have to see this one person saying, who cares what Ryan Dawson did, and then when Ryan Dawson goes against Dave, then they come back out and they say, hey, you're the guy that did this. Like, I'd have to see that it's actually the same people are doing that, because there's a lot of people online, man. Like right. I have no idea if that's actually the case.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, to create I have actually gotten through almost all like my bullet points here, right? So like, if you're not convinced that the Mises Caucus is a cult, you win at this point, right? Like I don't really have much new information. All I can do is talk about my perspectives, what I have seen, and accept the perspectives of other people, right? Like I don't want this to be a one-sided, my perspectives are right, your perspectives are wrong. And you know what, even if you don't like my perspective, I can at least give you experiences, right? Things that I have seen, heard, have with a friend. And unfortunately, when we talk about culture, we're talking about generalities. It's going to be like, I will admit, I didn't trace the people who, I was like, were these the same people that denied, the thumbnail? Was these the same? Right. I don't know. I'll admit. All I see, I see the logos, and I'm just like, the Mises folks, right? And
sure.
And you know what? Dan and others like him took me aside after I made these allegations and really did a great job talking me through how their perspectives were different and how the other side to them seems like a cult. And I got to grant a lot of those experiences too. This is not
Don't put words in my mouth. Don't put.
This
no,
is not. No.
My stance here, to be very clear, is we're all different cults, And that's just, we're all bad people. I'm actually here to convince you, Hodey, that the Mises Caucus is indeed a cult, but then I'm going to convince you to join and become a brother.
Right. Yeah. I mean, great Kool-Aid. And hey, Mike, to get to visit a few of those islands, right? I mean, that'll be, there's perks, you know. I don't want this to be a one-sided, you know, my experience matters, therefore yours doesn't, because that's something that is never going to convince anybody, because I have to convince them that what they saw, what they've lived through didn't happen. You know, the human brain, let me talk about like bigotry real quick. The way the human brain works, we even measure intelligence this way still today, is how quick you can analyze a pattern. And so I work in restaurants, right? If you have 2 black people stiff you, and those are the first 2 black people you've served, 3rd black person comes in, what does your brain do? They're gonna stiff.
I'm getting stiff,
right?
Yep.
Mine doesn't.
Right. I'm getting stiff.
What the hell's wrong with you,
You're a better
Hodey?
person than me. You're a better person, right? Or actually, more technically, you're actually a stupid person, right?
Whoa.
Like, because your brain doesn't pick up on the pattern, right? Yeah. This is why when people are just like, I don't know what race is. I've never experienced race. Of course you have. Because your brain exists. You form patterns, right? Like you form these things. This is why, you know, it's important to kind of push back against that part against your brain, be like, you can't judge people like that. You know, you can't do that kind of thing. But the thing is the way it won't ever end is if I say those 2 black people that stiffed you never stiffed you. Well, you're forcing the person to then break reality. And I want to live in reality. My big issue here is that there are people living in realities that I don't live in, and so I can't reach them anymore, because what happens is as soon as this happens, all of a sudden the philosophy changes or their ideas change, or just, you know, and I'm fine if, you know what, if your ideas are changing to become more libertarian, no beef, right? I still listen to Part of the Problem. I still listen to the Tom Woods Show. I've never wanted to wave a Confederate flag. It's never happened. And it hasn't happened as a result of listening to those shows. And I don't think it's going to. I don't think they're headed in that direction. You know, like that's not the way.
Sounds like they're failing. They're going to have to do better. This is terrible.
No kidding, right? Like, I mean, obviously that's the whole goal, is blood and soil, and to bring all that back, you know, like, and so like my thing is, I'm not trying to make it, I don't want people to leave the goodness that they picked up behind. I don't want people to deny the things that they have seen or what they have been through. All I'm trying to do is add my experience to this and have people understand that I am also picking up on a pattern that I believe is worthy of addressing, at the very least, to say
about black people tipping, right?
About how bad black people tipping. Take that away. That's the lesson, everybody. Don't, you know, but just to say like, hey, like that's another guy who's having a different experience. That's how I want people to see me. Sure. And if somebody's listened to Clint, if you showed up to this debate, like for me, I want you to take what Clint says very seriously and what Dan says very seriously too, because they have different experiences as well. My only experience with Michael Heiss was a bad one. And I texted him recently to try and I was hoping to get a hold of him actually before this deal here, because a lot of people are like, I just don't think you're seeing it right. I'm not sure he saw that as a lie. And you know what? I do want his perspective on it. I do, because that's my only experience with him, was that. And I do want to like most of these people. I don't like that I have become like, people just be like, oh, that guy, that Mises Caucus person hater. People called me a Dave Smith stan on my show all the time, because I'll say like, man, did you hear Part of the Problem this week? Like, this was really cool. Or, you know, like I'll post something on my wall and they just be, you know, and of course the anti-LPMC people are like, why did you post this? You could have posted this quote from anybody. You should have picked a different person. I don't like this messenger. You know, I don't give those people, you know, I will take wisdom from anybody, whoever it is. Don't ding it. Don't ring it, Dan. I'm saying anybody. Ah, dang. I did.
It's been a bit. No, it's just been a bit. I want to give.
It's not that
Yes, it was all very, very anti-Semitic. No, I want to give Clint.
Dawson is proud.
You've unpacked a lot there, and I just want to give Clint a chance to weigh in.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying black people are actually terrible tippers. I delivered pizzas for 4 years while I was in college. And statistically, granted, it's a small case study, but I assure you that black people tip worse than other people. It's just a fact. And you know what? I still love black people because they're amazing. But they don't tip that well. Anyways, moving on. So, sorry, that was
Unpacking
a weird way
the
to start
important
this.
stuff.
Yeah, that was a weird way to start this. And now to talk about personal experiences. I have been, granted, I have had a much more positive experience with these people that you have not had positive experiences with. I have interacted with them online consistently for most of the past year and a half, and also now spent quite a bit of time with all of these people in person. I find Scott Horton, Mike Ice, Dave Smith. I don't really know Tom. I've met him twice, but it was very brief. But yeah, I've found them all to be extraordinarily honorable, passionate, sincere people that hold liberty as their highest value. And to me, that is everything. You know, that's who I am. That's how I feel, and that's what I'm looking for in, you know, the standard bearers for libertarianism moving forward. I find it unbelievable that people look at these guys and say that they don't want that. It's remarkable to me. But oftentimes it's the same people that have, you know, besmirched Ron Paul's legacy, so it's not exactly surprising. You know, they have found ways to, in my opinion, concoct gripes against these people for a very long time. And so yeah, it's not out of the blue. It's kind of what I expected, but it's still disappointing to see because I think that we're up against a really serious time, maybe the most serious time in human history, or at least in the past 100 years. And, you know, on the cusp of World War III, potential for like the greatest of depressions, the ultimate debt apocalypse, like the conversion to central bank digital currencies, the complete relinquishing of bodily autonomy. Like that, we have such enormous problems, and it breaks my heart when I see people like you, who I think are good libertarians, find reasons for disagreement when we are so close ideologically. And I don't know what it'll take other than to say, toughen up, Hodey, toughen the fuck up, man. Like we have really serious shit we have to deal with. And if you see some people saying some stuff online that rubs you the wrong way, I get it. And I can certainly understand why it might cause you some concern. But I assure you, labeling all of these people, and including myself and Dave and all these people, as being part of a cult is not helping us. And it doesn't, I don't think it even serves your purpose. Like, I know that you want people to listen to your concerns, but when the allegation starts with something like that, it's going to make it very hard for people to take you seriously, because they also have their personal experiences. And I don't think that they think they're in a cult. And even if you do believe that they're in a cult, you're not going to convince someone that they're in a cult by saying they're in a cult, you know? So like your tactics just don't make sense. So that's kind of the overall picture on it. But beyond that, I find that the accusations are, they're not empty, but they're thin. They're very thin. And just based off of my experience, I really don't find any validity to these claims, other than to say that there is going to be some aspect of tribalism and you know, supporting your heroes in the movement that is inevitable, and even libertarians are going to fall prey to it. I agree with you that we should be cautious of it. We should hold our standard bearers to a high standard. I personally intend to do so, and I will try and do so publicly where I feel like it's necessary. But I think that there's one other aspect of this, that there's a level of respect, or like privacy, that goes along with respect. If you think that someone has made an error, I want to give that person an opportunity to correct it first privately, because I don't have any interest in like making the situation worse for somebody if they have fucked up. And I want them to be able to do the right thing. And I think that it's more meaningful if they do the right thing on their own, and it's not public pressure that forces that. I in fact had an experience with that back in December, and it blew up in my face, but I'll leave that aside. And I was dragged mercilessly for it because I had gone privately to this person as opposed to publicly. And it put me in the position of then having to put everything out publicly that had been private just to prove my case. But I still would have done the same thing had I had to do it all over again, because I think when you respect someone, you want to give them that opportunity. And I think that you should be able to rest a little bit easier knowing that there is a lot of stuff behind the scenes where we try and course correct. We try and keep the dialogue from getting too vitriolic. It's happening today with Karlin Borisenko. She's making some statements I strongly disagree with, and my clan is going after her mercilessly. And I hope that the guys will chill out. So this is just part of internet culture more than anything, and I think that it gets extrapolated into being some sort of assessment of unlibertarianism or whatever, when in reality it's just kind of like bullshit internet stuff. So that's my assessment of it. And last note, I just want to say that it personally feels, this is a sensitive topic, so if you want me to wait, I'll wait. Go ahead and ding the bell. I did an anti-Semitism.
Perfect.
I do want to weigh in. Clint, hold on to that thought. I want to give Hodey a chance to respond. We'll be wrapping up and taking questions here in just a little bit because I think we're kind of winding down. But Hodey, you said that when you put out the statement or whatever, you received less death threats than you thought, which I think, I mean, that's funny, but it's kind of telling. Did you receive any death threats, first of all?
No, I'm sorry. I received none. I had one person who told me to kill myself, but I did not receive actually a single death threat.
I don't think that counts. But I think
no, the suicide doesn't count. The guy was, I think he said to Arbud Dwyer myself or whatever, and he's just, okay, behind a sock account or whatever. Yeah, no, I've done a lot of debates where the death threats actually happened, and this, I think the reason I say I'm surprised is because this was probably like the biggest target, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, you guys have said it over and over. The biggest thing in the LP, right? Like, obviously.
Now,
but,
the reason I ask is because, like the people who instantly like had a knee-jerk reaction to your statement, it's because they've been called Nazis and white supremacists and this and that for being a part of the Mises Caucus for the last 4 to 6 years, and like they've been painted with this broad brush for ever, and it's not something new to them. So they painted you with a broad brush and roped you into that, and they were even still pretty kind about it, I would say, if they didn't, not that they should have given you death threats. I don't know exactly what the interactions were, but it's just...
It does kind of disprove the assertion, though.
Right,
I mean, if we were a cult, you would expect death threats, probably.
Right. We've got one side, and we can kind of look at this as two sides. They're not really sides because, like, I don't want to lump everybody. I don't want to call everybody a cult that's in disagreement with the Mises Caucus, but it's kind of like the entire thing currently is Mises Caucus versus everybody else, and it's not really a versus from what I've seen in the Mises Caucus, but everybody else that's against the Mises Caucus is hard against the Mises Caucus and has been painting with these broad brushes, and the Mises Caucus still didn't lump you, like they would have been somewhat justified to paint you with a broad brush at that point, and they just jumped to assumptions, I would imagine, that you're part of the people that are, making these outlandish accusations. I know you're not. Outside of this one unreasonable accusation, in my opinion. But yeah, I personally, like from my experience, I'm not even technically a Mises Caucus member. I've never paid the Mises Caucus. They've only paid me. So you could say I'm the opposite of Mises Caucus member in some ways. But I've had long conversations with Michael Heiss on things that I disagree with him on. I've had long conversations with a lot of these people, and I've disagreed strongly on some things, and it's always just a respectful conversation. It's never like, cult mentality of put your foot down. I'm sure there are some people that are a little too, go with the flow, do whatever the majority does in the Mises Caucus because, they don't necessarily, like, it seems like the people that you're taking the most issue with are not like I hate the word influencers, but people that actually think for themselves and put their ideas out there. And I could be wrong, but it seems like they're just people that are in the Mises Caucus to be a part of a collective of some sort, whether they realize they're doing that or not, and they're kind of just going with whatever the statement is or whatever. But I don't know. Sorry for weighing in so much.
You're in the Mises Caucus industrial complex since you're employed by them, so we can't take anything you have to stay serious.
True.
Yeah, I will turn this into kind of an open-ended question. What do you think the solution is then to if you find somebody in the Mises Caucus who is kind of, let's not even treat this politically. Let's just say you see them becoming hateful towards trans people, right? Or dismissive of their identity. And when they used to be loving towards them. What's the best way to reach them? Now, I will admit that I have a lot of regrets with this whole thing. First of all, being on the show and going up against two people smarter than me was a dumb thing for me. No, I'm just kidding. Like, I love you guys. Like, I'm making my points as best as I can here. That I have a lot of regrets, and maybe the biggest of which was not contacting people beforehand, before saying something, because that was the overwhelming response. Was I will say this too. I didn't even get one. I got messages, of course, that disagreed with me. I did not get one that was hostile. And of course,
because you came privately.
What's that?
Because you came privately. Yes.
Right. Well, they came to me privately, which is good on them, right? That's something I didn't give them the benefit of the doubt of.
Right.
And that's a fair. If that's your problem with me, that's a problem I have with me. You should have that problem with me.
And like I told you, I saw your post and I just didn't respond because I'm like, I love Hodey. He's cool. I disagree with him on this. It's not really my cross to bear or my public, thing to do. So
I think, and I'm not walking back everything I said, because I do think that there is a culture. I can only talk about culture in generalities. I think it exists, and I think it requires certain perspectives to talk about. Now, obviously, when you call somebody a cult, I mean, what do I say? The culture is bad. My point is that what people are doing, and maybe it's hero worship. Jacob said I should probably say tribal. I'm not sure the word, and maybe cultist is the wrong word. I don't think people like being called tribal either. I don't think people would also like me saying their culture is bad. My point is
tribalism has a lot fewer negative connotations tied to it than just cult. I mean, cult means like what I opened with candles and creepy shit. Like,
and I wouldn't even deny that we are tribal. Like, we clearly are tribal. Like, there's a reason that there are caucuses, is because we have selected a slightly, a variant of the overarching tribe of the Libertarian Party. So, I don't find that nearly as offensive as saying that we're a cult, because a cult implies all sorts of other things that I don't think are accurate. That you can't dissent, that you can be excommunicated if you go against the leader, and all this other stuff. And I've personally done it. I know it's not the case. So I think that that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you more than anything, is that, my experience has been that that's just flatly not true. But your other critiques are somewhat valid, in that there are certainly, dickishness has taken an uptick, and I have played my part in that. And I don't intend to change it, for the record. So
not mutually exclusive, though. That's not just a Mises Caucus thing, I would say.
Oh, of course.
That's a libertarian thing in general.
Yeah.
Or a human thing. Sorry, continue.
My issue, to bring this around here, the reason I think it struck differently with the Mises Caucus and others, whereas there's other bad cultures and stuff elsewhere, and tribal, right, other caucuses and stuff like that, is what happened when Mike Shipley told the lie. Well, he gone, right? Like, people we won't associate with him. I have left. Like, I was in the Fakertarians discussion group for a long time because I thought that could be redeemed, and after there was an incident specifically where they harassed Jacob to the point where it seemed like they were threatening his family. And I was like, okay, I'm out of here. Like, you got done, right? Out of here. Done with you guys. But the thing is,
surprised you didn't leave after they just kept sharing gay porn over and over again. That would have probably got me out of there. But you have greater patience.
Don't be a homophobe, Clint.
I might. How long ago was this? I've been gone for a long time.
I'm totally kidding, dude. I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Their whole show is gay porn. Let's be honest.
As though there's something wrong with that, you bigots. Anyway,
I've been on the show. It was lovely. It was just circle jerk.
You
It was
enjoyed
amazing.
it. Okay, well, good. You're included now. As long as you can spank it to gay porn, you're not.
That's the bar.
The thing is that I felt that my criticisms of those folks, Vosh is another great example, right? Like, at first I had somebody saying, no, those screenshots are fake, right? Like his, let's get with kids and murder Republicans and bang their wife and kids on top of the dead bodies. Like,
that's
at first there was,
I'm not even familiar with that. Wow.
Oh yeah, so there is some screenshots here, and he has several, because unfortunately what he'll does is he'll drift into this direction and then apologize and then drift in the direction, apologize. So I had some friends being like, those screenshots are fake. And I'm like, okay, are they? Let's look into this. They weren't fake. And they're like, yeah, but maybe it's maybe he was trying to make a point. And I was like, well, what's the point to be made here? And by the end of it, we got to this kind of place where it's that's a gross thing to say. And I'm like, thank goodness that I can get, and I understand Vosh being a libsock, my lefty friends are going to love him. I understand why. If you learn something great from Vosh, Hopefully it wasn't the murder Republicans and have sex with their kids, you know, like hopefully that's not the good thing you're thinking of. But if you learn something good from Vosh, I don't want to take that part away from you, but you know, you should at least know this is bad, right? Like, and what I saw was nobody's philosophy on having sex with children changed when Vosh did. Now I understand Tom Woods didn't have sex. I'm not making that accusation, right? But the philosophy of many people changed when it happened to them. The philosophy with Dawson and Dave Smith changed when a criticism, you know, happened. And I find that to be a very different thing than my criticisms of the LPAC. Because when I do that, they're either discredited, accepted. I mean, some people be friends with Jackie Perry, but you know, like nobody's all of a sudden like, no, actually, that is pretty based. I mean, I guess you got with that Elliot Sherman in Texas or whatever. Like, you got like two people that are like, oh, cool, you know, but like nobody likes them anymore. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that you have to dislike somebody, but at least accept that that part of their philosophy is bad, as opposed to incorporating it into your own. And I would feel a lot more comfortable if I saw the people that were in the LPMC be like, you know, trans people are my homies and the Fed still sucks, because you can do both at the same time, right? Like, I don't want to, this is not about one overriding the other. Clint's absolutely right. If you want to talk about priorities and things that are dangerous for this world and attacking those, sure. I'm just asking you, like, even if you say, well, I don't think this trans issue is a big deal, I don't think borders are a big deal. Well, at least you don't have to talk about borders, right? Then a lot, because it's not a big deal. As opposed to being like, no, closed borders, that's the one issue. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, that's my one issue with libertarians. I can't do that. Or, you know, pro-life or pro-choice. I can't do that. That's my one issue. I mean, if that's the biggest deal in your mind, then that's the biggest deal in your mind, and I'll try to convince you otherwise. But, you know, I don't want to see people's philosophy changed, I guess is what I'll say. And I see philosophies changing not based on philosophical arguments. I see it changing. And like I said, I don't want to get into the cult of personality. I don't think it's changing because Heiss told them to change or Dave Smith told them to change or whatever either. I think it changes because the tribe seems to be going a certain direction, and so we're going that direction as well. Culture is just something worth looking at, right? For everybody. It gets bad if you don't take care of it.
Oh, I totally agree.
I want to ask Hodey, I don't know the details on the Vosh thing or Fakertarian's involvement in that or anything, but if there were people that, like, you know, supported that, did you come out and condemn them as a cult?
I didn't see anybody willing. I will. I tell you what, if there is a group of people who have their philosophy changed to murdering Republicans and banging their kids, I will absolutely.
I mean, that's a little more extreme than anything.
Right. I will.
That's a little bit more extreme than closed borders.
It is a little bit, right? But it is. And here's the thing is, like, I would absolutely come out and condemn a group if I feel that their culture is going a certain way. And that certain way is, the reason I did it with the Mises Caucus, I mentioned this in the post, is because these are a lot of my friends. Like, I had a huge, I mean, Dan, you and I have a huge crossover of friends on this whole thing, right? Yeah. So many friends in this, because
well, here's the thing. Let me cut you off there, because we do have some crossover acquaintances, but when I started working with the Mises Caucus, a whole lot of the people that I was working with before seemed to think of me as the enemy, and they cut me off and severed ties and haven't really spoken to me since. So if you want to talk about cult behavior, like, the Mises Caucus doesn't care if I work with Spike Cohen or anybody that disagrees with them. They don't, it doesn't come up. But there's one side or one group that seem to have an issue with who I associate with.
Fair. And I don't like that, right? Like, so I will condemn that as well. Like, if you're just looking at, like, if this is a condemnation fest, now, do I want to fix these people and bring them in? But I am going to condemn that behavior because, you know, and Dan, you told me some other, you know, private stories. Like, that is so crappy to treat your friends that way, right? Like, somebody who is good to you and you respond to them negatively because they made a decision that they just felt was right. Like, here's the thing. I love Austrian economics. I hate the Fed. If there's like one issue I could take care of, like one department, I don't know, the Fed and Department of Defense are right side by side for me. But like, these are big issues, and I recognize these are big issues. And one of the reasons that I probably have so much overlap with the LPMC is because we both love Austrian economics, and we both recognize police are doing evil things. We're drafting our soldiers young, putting them in schools, telling them this is a noble profession, and sending them off to do the most unnoble thing that you could imagine, and then asking them to pick themselves up when they come back home. There are legitimately evil, awful threats in this world. I want to include among those threats. For me, you don't point at Nazi Germany. Let me just make this last point. You don't point at Nazi Germany and say, love the Jews, guys. That's not going to change it. What does change it is if I am in Nazi Germany, I say, I'm going to love my neighbors, and I want that culture to pass forward, right? To continue that. Because I can shake sticks at the wind all day. Like, war is bad. Well, that's not going to change it, right? Nobody cares. What changes is if I have on a personal level, and I am able to make connections with people. I'm not saying this can't be a sweeping phenomenon, like you look at with the LPMC, or you look at it with Martin Luther King Jr., right? Something like that. Like, you can still do that, but the importance is, even when you talk to these people, you have them embrace it personally. You're going to love your neighbors. You're going to even love those who persecute you. We're going to make this world a better place, and it's going to be hard, but we are going to fight this thing out, because yes, this is the big problem, but we don't solve the big problem by letting the little stuff go. We solve the big problem by making sure all those little things add up. Ask any athlete, this is how you get better. You get those little things right, the result is better. A dumb sports analyst will be like, well, just play better football. No, it's all those little mechanics that go into everything, right? And I just want those little mechanics, right? When you build yourself up, are you treating your neighbor lovingly? Are you treating, those online with respect? And I failed at that. I grant that. I wish that I had these conversations personally before. I still feel the way I do, that there's something bad in the culture, and we can debate what that bad thing is, right? Cult might be the wrong word. Maybe tribal's the better word. Whatever it may be, but there's something bad that I've recognized that I don't like. I am losing friends. I am losing friends, not just the, like, on my friends list. Whatever, right? Like, we're all across the country. Nobody cares about a few sock accounts here and there. But, people that I'm losing them to their own anger and really genuine hate. And when somebody says publicly something bad and 3 people message me to be like, hey, by the way, we don't believe that, like, that person sucks. Why did you message me privately? What are you so afraid of? What are you so scared of? Are you like, what is it, street cred? Are you losing out with the cool kids? If you say, like, no, I don't dead name people in the Mises Caucus, does that kill your cred? Like, whatever that is. And we can talk about, maybe my definition is wrong. Maybe you don't like cult. I don't really love the term either. I am having trouble coming up with a specific, but that's the thing I don't like. And I think it exists, and I think it's worth addressing and fixing. And maybe you are, in which case we can kind of lead peacefully. I just want it to be getting done, and I want listeners to say, is that me? Have I gotten better at liberty, worse at liberty? I want people to witness to the right and left. Great. I want people to be able to bring in people from the Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul and Rand Paul and, whoever it may be. I mean, there's a libertarian, who went on to say Ilhan Omar would be better than anybody in the Mises Caucus just the other day, right? Like, how detached are you, right? Like, how detached are you? Even if I can disagree with somebody in the Mises Caucus all day about, like, borders, but borders run by somebody who's in the Mises Caucus is not going to look like what it looks like under Joe Biden, right? Like, that hate's just not there. Sorry, go ahead and ding the bell. I've kind of, ding it. I said an anti-Semitism. Go. Yeah, there you go.
You brought up Ilhan Omar, so you may have actually said an anti-Semitism.
Oh, crap.
Good timing.
So, well, I have so many different ways I can take this. Let me start by saying, it seems personal. This is armchair psychologist Clint here. This is not debate style Clint here. I think that what I've witnessed from you,
if you're not debating, you're getting the ding.
Watching your prior debate, watching your prior debate as well as today, is that you have brought up repeatedly that you've lost friends. And what's fascinating about this is, as you're labeling us a tribe or tribalistic, it seems to me that much of this angst that is going along with this experience is that you have lost yours. And I think that that's sad, because we do need a tribe. You know, we're social beings, and you know, I for one will welcome you back in if you'd like to join. I don't necessarily expect that you'll want to do so, but I strongly believe that if you are the type of person, and I take you at your word that you are, that your priorities are ending the Fed, ending the war on drugs, ending the police state, ending the warfare state, ending the military industrial complex, then your priorities align with mine. And you know, my personal opinion is that while it may be kind to use someone's preferred pronouns, I have no obligation to demand that from somebody. I don't. I have I do have a right to disassociate with someone. If you know, if someone just constantly calls me she, I probably would disassociate with them and be like, "What are you doing, dude? Like, we're done here." But beyond that, you know, I understand that you want that to be the culture of the Mises Caucus, that you want kind of sensitivity training to be embedded in this. It's just simply not going to happen. You're dealing with a bunch of very angry, relatively young compared to the old guard people that feel as if they have been abused. I'm speaking for myself, but I think I speak for many of them, that our liberties have been stripped from us throughout our lives, and very severely so over the past 2 years. And we have been radicalized, and our priorities are no longer, you know, about being very sensitive. You know, our priorities are the big things and trying to abolish the state. I mean, really, really lofty, almost utopic type goals. But, you know, you talked about how doing the small things is how you get to be, you know, an elite athlete. I agree, but doing the small things, when it comes to like if the small thing includes tennis training when you're trying to be the best NFL player, then it probably wouldn't be wise to have that in your regimen. And to me, focusing on pronouns is tennis. You know, it's not that it's irrelevant. It might help with your cardio, but it ain't necessarily going to make you win the ring at the end of the season. And it's just not my priority. Just being honest. And I think there is at least I know of one trans person that is either Mises Caucus actually a member or affiliated, and I think she's great, and I call her she, and I have no problem doing so myself. But at the same time, I'm not going to make that like my cross to bear when it comes to online interactions. Like, it's just simply not my priority. And you know, if it's yours, I wish you well in that fight. And you know, I hope that you can set that aside when it comes to the bigger picture and realize that we are your allies, and it doesn't have to be antagonism. It doesn't have to be name calling between us. And that's kind of where I'll leave it for now. I do appreciate the opportunity to try and give a little bit more of a pro Mises Caucus opinion. And it's just my opinion. But I think having interacted with these people in person, probably more than you have, I hope you will take my perspective into account in your evaluation moving forward.
Sure will. The so let me I'll give you another chance to finish things off here. So when we say it's like tennis training, now for me, I think that each individual, when I have the philosophy of individualism, it matters to me. Now, maybe the individual can be wrong. Like, the individual wants something like, I as an individual think everybody should feed me grapes until I'm dead. It's like, well, that's something you're putting on somebody else. But as far as individuality, your own recognition of that you are as an individual are value, because there isn't collectives. We are all just collectives of individuals. The collective is not first, the individual is first. So for me, things like respecting a trans person is part of that individuality, right? Like, I respect your perspective of yourself, what you want to do with yourself. Now, you could be wrong, and I want to be very clear about this. Transgenderism exists. Gender dysmorphia exists. Dysphoria exists, right? You need to understand that both of these things are things. I'm not saying you go out and every time your kid wears a dress, it's dick off time, right? Like, you need to, like, we need to equip ourselves to have these conversations, right? To prepare ourselves, and definitely not.
And are we back? Are we back? If you're in the chat, tell us if we're back. Drop a 1 if you can hear us. And once again, I'll get to stitch this together later. Let me check the stream.
I'm watching over the side on YouTube, and it's behind. Like YouTube is badly behind. I'm still chatting.
All right, we are back. Welcome back to the show, guys. And yay, technology. Apparently, the CIA doesn't like us talking about the Mises Caucus either. But Hodey, to the best of your ability, pick up wherever you were and proceed.
Yeah, my point here is just saying that I think that we mentioned before we can't afford to burn any bridges, right? Like how we need to grow. We need to grow. That's all there is to it. Don't make enemies we don't need to make. Pick up the people and make them libertarian if we can. I can't force you to be respectful of a trans person, but I can recognize that you will turn a trans person off that should be on your side. Trans people should be libertarians, right? It'd be dumb for them to be anything except libertarians, right? So if we make them feel unwelcome or unwanted, then I don't like that. I think it's a bad tactic. And I think that I'm not saying that we need to embrace every leftist pretend to love you but smack you in the face kind of thing. Let's give them real love, right? I think it's been mentioned before that people want them like, oh, coddled, like they're so cute, they're so wonderful, everything they do is great. No, they're people, right? They're just people. And you know what? If you say F you to your friends, you should be able to say F you to your friend who's trans, right? Like if you treat them like you would anybody else.
Making jokes.
Right. Make jokes. Right. If that's the way you treat your friends, if you tell an inordinate amount of white person jokes, then feel free to throw some trans jokes in there as well. You know what? Because that's just who you are and that's on point. That's great. When you are only making jokes at them, then you tell on yourself, right? Now we know who you are. Now, I'm not getting you kicked out of the movement. No one can force you to be respectful, but I got a problem with that. I have a tactical problem with that. And will you bring certain people in? Yes, but I am skeptical if those people will respect others' individual liberties. I hope, because I hope that people like Clint and you, Dan, will push back. I mean, Dan, you've hosted people like this, right? Mm-hmm. Like wonderful people that have great voices, regardless of what's going on in their downstairs business, because it shouldn't matter. I'm not saying that I don't like it when people are boiled down to this is your race, this is your color, this is your gender. We are so much more than that, right? Like that is. Would
you say it's the least interesting thing about them?
I know, right? Let's hope, right? And not the most interesting thing about them, because that would make me super something if not racist, but I just think that it's something that we need to. I want to see the LPMC be like, yes, let's embrace this. Division of labor is a thing, right? You guys focus on Austrian economics. Maybe you don't want to focus on social issues. That's fine, but don't trash your business partner. If your business partner is saying, yeah, let's be good on social issues, great, I'll be good on social issues and I won't talk smack about your economics. You hype up the economics and don't talk trash about the social issues. It's really, I think for me, that would be a great, if you were only able to dedicate your life to one of those things, I think that would be a great compromise, like that would, for me, make it an equitable working condition. And now, in fairness to you guys, you do have people who bash Austrian economics, right? So I'm certainly not saying that this is going to be perfect. But I do want to see, I would like to see that my friends, if you know me and you're the LPMC, I would like you to be like, hey, at the very least, leave those people alone. Maybe don't tell that joke. Maybe don't turn those people off, because those are potential allies. You know what? Those are potential allies that I feel like may end up loving economics, right? Like, let's get that pipeline flowing back and forth. I'd love it if we cycled back and forth to be like, hey, you're interested in some social issues? Oh, you had some question about economics? I know a few guys you need to talk to, right? Like these guys are bomb at it. And if you have a question about economics, I tell you what, I'm more of a social issues guy. You need to talk to these guys. And vice versa. If somebody starts mouthing off about why social issues, do or don't matter or something, be like, you know what? I'm here for the Austrian economics. I'm here for the anti-war stuff, but you know what? There is somebody over here who really cares about the social economics or social systems. You should talk to them. Ding. Yes.
Clint, your response. And we can wrap up here in just a bit and get to a couple questions because we're going
I'm good with closing on that. We should take questions. It'll be fun.
Okay. Clint, did you want to respond to that before we jump to questions? Oh, why don't we have Clint? Because guest has muted themselves like a boomer, it says. No? It says you did.
Dude, I owned him so hard.
Oh,
he just went silent.
Flattened him. Clint, jump out and jump back in. I'll see if that works. Well, guys, this is a fun way to wrap up this conversation with... Wait. How about now? You there?
Hello.
Hey. Sorry.
I
go
hear
ahead.
you now.
I could hear all that. It said I was in the green room that entire time, so it was very confusing.
Oh, that's probably my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was not muted. Anyways, I listened to all that. I don't have much, of disagreement, to be honest. It's like I just think that the biggest thing to me is that we're not going to be able to, like, you're dealing with how many thousands of individuals right now in the Mises Caucus. Like, you're not going to be able to mold the exact social media environment that you would prefer. Just as I would prefer that people that believe that they're libertarian, but we should have nationalized healthcare, I would rather them not be carrying the libertarian banner around. It drives me fucking crazy. But they do it, and some of them have blue checks, and it drives me fucking crazy. But there's nothing I can do about it. They exist, and I feel like it's going to come down to the battle of ideas. Like, who is actually going to win this out is going to come down to ideas. And personally, I think that the track record of the Mises Caucus demonstrates that we have the pulse of this country to some extent. There is a tremendous desire for truth telling and a lack of decorum. Like, people want raw honesty because they have been lied to their entire lives, and very starkly so over the past 2 years. And they are like salivating for any truth. Joe Rogan's entire success is just about a guy that's fucking trying to tell the truth, even if he's wrong a lot. And that's what we're tapping into with this movement, in my opinion. And I don't think that it would make sense for us to stop, and if someone tells the truth, but they're wrong, it's your job, Hodey, to try and correct them or to persuade them that they're wrong, that they should be embracing the trans community, if that's your position. I personally don't think that there is a huge problem with that in our community. I don't think that these people would actually not want a trans person in the community or in the movement. Like, I just haven't experienced that. And I personally don't feel that way at all. I may make jokes here and there that may make people think that I'm not, down with trans people, but it's just like, no, I don't know a ton. I think I probably met the first one in my life a couple years ago, and she's awesome. and we joke about everything, and she's my people, like, we totally get along. So I don't know. I think that, like, have some patience, have some kindness. You're talking about that with us. I hope that you can do the same, with the alleged bigots that are taking over the party, that have some patience, have some kindness, and realize that we're all a work in progress. And I think that when you're building something, especially as tumultuous as like an alleged takeover of the party, there's going to be a lot of infighting, a lot of rough patches, a lot of heated tempers, and you're going to get a lot of name calling and mudslinging. And if your priority is those big pictures, those top 5 or 6 things that I listed earlier, then I consider you an ally, just point blank, period. Like, that's how I feel about it. And if my lack of decorum, my completely unruly style of humor rubs you the wrong way sometimes, that's okay too. I'd prefer that you keep it to yourself, because I'm not going to stop doing it. But I totally understand that my sense of humor is not for everybody, and I just keep it moving, man. Like, if we all identify that the biggest problems are those few things that are in front of us, I think that we can work together. And as you said, division of labor style, I am more than happy for you to be the welcome mat to some communities that I'm not focused on reaching out to in particular. I believe in the power of the individual, and I believe in the power of our message, that we don't need to sculpt our message to every, micro demographic group. Like, I want to just spit hot liberty shit and see who it vibes with. And that's all I'm about. And I'm not going to try and cultivate it for my people either. I'm not trying to appeal to everybody that already supports me. I just had people flip out on me because I had a guest on that I personally disagreed with, but they were like, you didn't push back enough. I don't give a fuck. That's what I'm about. I like seeking the truth, and I like having different opinions on, and I think that that's how we progress. So even if it comes down to someone who's bigoted against trans people, I would rather have a conversation with them than excommunicate them. And if I identify that to be a big problem when I'm actually interacting with people in real life, I will certainly address it. So you have my word on that. I don't think. But anyways,
So you're cut. What was that last thing you said? You were cutting out there.
The dog's barking, so I think my time's up.
Okay.
The dog did the dinging for me. Shut up.
It's an anti-Semitic dog.
Point here. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I will take that agreement with you all day. I think let's be good business partners to each other. We want to focus on not tear anybody down, right? Like I'm not going to tear down your good work. I don't want you to tear down my good work. I know it feels bad when my stuff is trivialized. I'm sure it feels bad when your stuff is trivialized. And I see people in the chat that
broad brushstrokes, calling people a cult. Would that be tearing people down?
If you're in the chat and you're upset that I generalize you, you have every right to be upset, right? If you feel that you are a very open-minded person, that you are getting more liberty-oriented, that your social and economic freedoms, like you're on, like Clint says, like you're just like super passionate and on fire for all of it, the whole pill of liberty, and you're just tripping on it, ignore what I'm saying, right? Like screw me then, because what I'm saying is not going to affect you. What I am saying is I have seen these things. I have seen these people. I know it is a thing. I think it is something worth addressing. I think we can at least have some amount of agreement there. And you know what? I think what we do is we hold ourselves and the people that care about us accountable, right? Like I can't hold the LPMC accountable because obviously I'm not them. And obviously, especially after this post, they aren't going to like me very much, right? But what I can do is
that's not true. That's not true. They would embrace you, dude. I'm telling you. Like that's the
drop
one thing
once in the chat if you would embrace Hodey joining the Mises Caucus right now. Go.
100%, man. I feel confident enough to speak for the community when I say, if your priorities are those top 5 things, I promise you, you have a home in the Mises Caucus. Like that is what we're about. And Dave Smith says it all the time, even in his speeches at the LP conventions where he's speaking to the dissident sects that exist. And he's sincere, man. Like his focus, his priority is that, and I have no doubt about it. Anyways.
First up from the fake super chats is Daniel 3 Podcast, who says, "Who is Hodey Johns? We were never friends."
This is a joke because on the post I had 2 people say like, what like, who are you? We were never friends, and we've been friends for like, we've exchanged birthday wishes and stuff. And it was another like kind of cultish moment where I was just like, guys, like, let me show you some screenshots of our messages asking how we're doing. Like we've been friends for a long time, but publicly it's like, I don't know who this guy is. We're never friends. Obviously fringe people, socks mostly. And mostly there's only 2 of them, right?
But by who are you, did they mean like maybe you've changed so much that they don't recognize you anymore?
No, like
okay.
Like I was bringing up like a past when I was just like, hey, like dude, like we wish each other happy birthday, and they're like, I don't even know who you are, and I'm just like, oh damn, check your messages, like Jacob is making that joke. Jacob and I have been friends for a while. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
That's why it was first. By the way, to you guys in the chats, I think we lost all the old fake super chats when we had to restart the stream. So if you had a question that you posted, throw it in there. But we do have some more. Matthew Butts says, fake super chat, Hodey.
I'm good with that. I get called Hodey John, Hodey Jones. Hodey Jones was the one that made the bingo card.
Oh, nice. Hodey, why do you have to single out a group of people and say, let me pull it back up, and say we support their rights when we already say we support the rights of all individuals to be? So obviously that's referring to the trans rights or human rights, and I would say the best answer to that, the best way to address that is to say human rights are trans rights. Like it goes both ways here. It is all encompassing, and that it kind of, some people find it off-putting that we're focusing solely on a specific group. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. This is another thing that I didn't see behind the scenes that Jacob brought to my attention when he posted the Mises Caucus with the rainbow flag. And of course, what we got out of that on the outside was several screenshots that look really bad, about people that are upset about it. And what Jacob was like, we had to kick a few bigots because of that post. And I was like, you know what? I didn't see that kind of self-assessment happening behind the scenes. Live and learn. I still believe that like kind of kicking them out doesn't necessarily fix like the culture. Like, why is it that somebody would say, hey, when you do stuff like this, it makes us look bad? I think it's worth saying, why does it make us look bad? Why do posts like Mises with a rainbow flag, why do you feel that makes you look bad? Why does that bring out the worst of you? Because we know it did. The person said it and she was right. But why does it bring out the worst in you when
I can explain it
with the rainbow flag? Yeah, go ahead.
Same reason the Joe Jorgensen, Black Lives Matter tweet got such pushback. I don't like it when we get into the collectivist muck. I think it's counterproductive. I think it's unlibertarian ultimately because
cultish.
it is. Yeah, well, that too, but it's also breaking us apart when we should be unified in that we are all people. And that's really, I think that this whole reversion, like this wokeness takeover where now color blindness is racism, is completely counter to what liberalism used to espouse. And now it's managed to make a bunch of people that aren't racist feel as if they are, and it's just totally counterproductive. It's tearing this culture at its seams. It's tearing this country at its seams needlessly. We've made so much progress on race relations, and we were probably at our apex of race relations when we were actually able to joke about each other's differences and laugh about it and become friends along those lines. And now everyone's fucking so concerned you have to have like an HR person sit in with you at lunch just in case you say something cross to some black coworker. It's absurd. So that's the main reason that I think many people, at least maybe I'm probably older than you by quite a bit, and that's probably why it rubs me the wrong way as someone who was raised in the 90s. I hate the trajectory of these things, and I hate it when we start doing rainbow flags Mises Caucus shit. I think it's fucking a terrible idea. So if they want to kick me out of the Mises Caucus for disagreeing with that, they're welcome to, but I have good reason for it.
I think the people who were kicked specifically had to go beyond it. Obviously, there was a lot of people who disliked it. There were people who were like, F gay people, and then it's like, okay, you're gone.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, sure. And I'll give you, I'll give you a lot of olive branches here because I think that treating like people, the goal is to be colorblind, right? To overcome that mechanism in your head that says, I got stiffed by 2 black people, but you know what? I'm going to treat them the same as everybody else. As opposed to saying, no, these are black people, they tip less, and you should be okay with that, right? And like,
yes.
It's like, oh, geez, yes. Right? Like, that is not, like, that's different. Like, all of a sudden, and I mean, all kinds of white people Karen issues too, right? Like, I wouldn't want that put on me just because white people get Karen-y. Obviously, they don't want that either just because, a few of your other people didn't tip. And so now you're going to treat me like I'm not going to tip. The goal is to override all that. And so the sad part that you're talking about, Clint, is it takes a lot of work for somebody to say, I'm not going to treat anybody by their race. You have to willfully tell your brain not to do it, right? And they put in all this work to do that.
Whatever.
And then have people say, no, we don't want that anymore. Go back. Undo that work that you did. Go back because we want to talk about these differences and we want to define these people about their differences. And that, gets into like race science and the tie-ins of race and culture. And I'm like, I want whatever makes us more unified, not what makes us more divided. Now, that being said, regarding
does it make us more unified to do a rainbow flag Mises Caucus thing? Because I'm not sure it does.
Yeah, because one of those stripes is you cis people. Right, we're all together in this,
I don't know,
so,
man.
Like, I'm just.
I don't know. That's not how it's been utilized. I mean, it's been utilized particularly for the LGBT whatever fucking movement, and it's not necessarily about unification. At least that's not how it's been used over the past decade. And I think that it's good intentioned, it's well intentioned, but it ultimately lands flat with people that have already feel as if they have already surpassed this issue, and it's almost offensive that we're going down this path again. I'm just explaining like the non-racist explanation for why it rubs us the wrong way is that it feels regressive. It feels like it's taking us backwards when we ought to be moving together forward.
Sure. You know what? If this were an issue where you're like, hey, I already love the hell out of GSM people, move on. Like, I'm done. Like, that box is checked. I don't know what you're doing. That'd be one thing. But that wasn't.
I don't know what GSM stands for, man. But
gender and sexual minorities.
People.
It's easier than doing LGBTQIA+, right? Like GSM
Gotcha.
is simple.
Okay.
Yeah. So the gender and sexual minorities. If it were, we've left that in the dust. That's too easy. But instead, what the result was, we found a few bigots and a lot of people that, get cheesed off by it. As opposed to, it's not I've left this behind. It's I'm not over this yet. And I think for me, that is kind of the revealing problem. Now, regarding the identity politics, like I would stand up for a foot doctor that wanted to practice and required a specific kind of license. And he's going through a different situation than like a different kind of doctor might. I don't consider it identity politics to get into what these individual groups are dealing with, right? Like that might be different from other people. If somebody wants to sell medical marijuana and should do so without a license, what they absolutely should. I don't think it's id Paul to talk about weed folks, even though a lot of people need licenses to sell stuff. I am fine with it being general and saying, yeah, let's get like, nobody should need a license. But I'm also okay with the specifics, like, hey, let's look at this one issue and look at how bad this is. And hopefully you can use that example to extrapolate it to others. Now, it can be weaponized, which is usually what people mean by identity politics, right? Like you versus me because of this, as opposed to like a unifying factor. But I do find that there are times when we say this community is dealing with this one thing, and that's good. I want to look at that.
All right, moving on. We could spend all day talking about this. Matthew Butts did have another question on that, but it was mostly just, do you think that the trans people in the Mises Caucus would feel tokenized if it was brought up? We spend a quick response to that because we've got more that we need to get to here.
Yes, I do.
Hodey?
You know what? If they do, that's valid. I think that, I mean, in fact, I have been told by Jacob that they feel tokenized and trivialized when that kind of thing comes up. And, you know, I look at all the hateful things that were said that resulted to people, you know, getting kicked or whatever. And I think that is also hurtful and worth addressing. But I also think, yeah, if you feel tokenized, then I would respect that. Just why, if I would respect your pronouns, why wouldn't I respect what you feel about the flag? You know what I mean? Like if you're like, hey, I'd appreciate you not using that. Well, if I'm going to respect that you don't want me calling you he, him, then yeah, I'll respect if you don't want me using the flag. Sure. Mm-hmm. That's gotcha. Fair.
Black Flag Podcast says, fake super chat. Hodey, is there any point you wouldn't walk back after this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, everything that I said in terms of it being bad, we can talk about the kind of bad. That's the one point that I'm really kind of walking back is the way I treated people. Like, you know, when you call everybody a cult, you know, that's
got a lot of ones in this chat too, by the way, for bringing Hodey into the Mises Caucus. People seem cool with it.
That's sweet.
I told you.
That's sweet. I appreciate it. You know what? I appreciate that. I feel a lot of love there, guys. I understand that.
And you know why?
Not going to, because people get over it. I mean,
yeah. No, but it's more than that. It's because it's a long form conversation where they get to hear both sides of the discussion. They get to see your humanity. When you're online, exactly. You don't see each other's humanity when you're online. And I think that's oftentimes the problem, is that you perceive the worst in these comments when it's like, I know there are some people that would just be like, F gay people when you put the rainbow flag, just because they're pissed at the messaging, you know, like, not to say that there aren't also bigots that would do the same thing. Of course there are, but I just know these type of people, they fucking despise it. And I'm one of them. I hate it. I hate it when we go down the Black Lives Matter, positioning or messaging. I think it's fucking totally stupid and counterproductive. We can have differences of opinion on it. You know, that's totally reasonable to have a difference of opinion. I'm not trying to throw anyone out because they used it, but I think that we need to be very careful about how we message on a national scale. And when you're sending it out from LP National or from the presidential candidate, that just doesn't represent the vast majority of the Libertarian Party. And it makes it seem as if we're trying to defend ourselves from these baseless accusations of racism. And I think they are largely baseless. And that's why many of us have such a knee-jerk reaction when you start to, you know, label us Nazis or a cult or whatever else. It's like, we know these people. We know it's false. And we also know ourselves. And that's why it's so irritating. And then you get, you know, these responses that are filled with vitriol, and it's like, well, that's why, dude. We've had years of people like Eric July pulled down John Hudak's hit piece on Tom Woods, not because of the merits of the argument, and not even because of the article itself, but because John Hudak has come at Eric July for fucking years and years and years. And I don't blame Eric at all for that, especially when he's saying he's like alt-right adjacent, home for Nazis and shit, and he's a fucking black man that grew up in Texas, I'd be like, yeah, fuck this dude. So I get, like, I think that there's this lack of understanding when it comes to the tribalism. Like, people just aren't hearing each other and they're talking past each other. So when we get to actually speak one-on-one and see each other's humanity, I think that we can actually get along in a much better way. So I hope in the future you will reach out to people on a personal level prior to these more broad-based accusations. But anyways, I've said my piece.
Daniel 3 Podcast in the chat is asking a bunch of questions. Man, you had your chance. I'm sorry that you didn't take it before. But
no ones from Daniel.
That's right. Hodey, do you want to respond to what Clint just said?
Oh, I mean, I think both sidesism exists. It doesn't validate anything, right? Like, have there been general attacks against anybody who criticizes the Don't Say Gay bill? Anybody who criticizes DeSantis? Of course, right? Like, these are things that unfortunately, like, I don't want to sit here like I'm the only one that has ever made a mistake in dealing with a collective and criticizing a wide group of people.
Yeah.
All three of us have done that, right? Yeah. Like, and yeah, I might be the one experiencing the most regret from it because I care about the people that I've hurt. But I also think that if you two were to, have a one-on-one conversation with, hey, these people that's like, hey, I'm staying at home because there's a death threat against me because I'm trans, I don't think yet either of you would say that's okay, right? Like, because, yeah, we're in person, right? But the online persona, like, things are different out there, right? Like you said, Clint, that somebody might say F gay people in response to that, even though they don't mean it, just because they hate the messaging so much. For me, that's not how you turn this into a positive or recruiting thing, right? Like, this isn't a way to, if we're going to be like the Martin Luther King Jr. and take this party from a 2% to a 51% like we need to do, I don't know that that's the way, because I think you're going to lose a lot of people that you could have gained.
I am not saying it's productive. I'm just explaining the rationale behind it. Like, my job is to recruit. Dave's job is to recruit. Like, the people that actually have platforms that people are listening to, like, you definitely need to be more on point with your messaging. But when it comes to, some random anon that's online that's saying some crazy shit, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not going to take that super seriously. I'm certainly not going to say that that's representative of the entire movement just because I know factually it's not. But I get your point, and it's not helpful. It's not productive. I'm just explaining the rationale. That's it.
Yeah. And that's fair. I think we're good to go to the next one.
All right. Tyson Brownlee says, would Hodey rather have my uncle who thinks we should turn the Middle East into glass vote Dave Smith because he fights COVID tyranny, or would he rather imperfect voters go elsewhere?
Would I rather that his uncle support vote Dave Smith? Okay, I'm cool with him fighting the COVID tyranny. Obviously, the turn to Middle East in glass is stupid. So basically, he's dumb. Would I rather take advantage of his stupidity, like, in evil, because he wants to turn the Middle East into glass, and have him vote for somebody who isn't going to turn the Middle East into glass? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Duh. Right.
So, so why shouldn't we want racists to vote for Dave too then?
I do.
Okay. You just don't want them to be actual, like, Mises Caucus members.
I don't want them. Hold on. I don't want them to take over the culture. I don't want them to. I
assure you that it will never happen.
Cool.
I assure you that they're not going to take over, dude. I promise you.
I mean,
because I wouldn't be involved if that happened, and Dave wouldn't be involved if that happened. Like, we would all get the fuck out if that was like what the Libertarian Party became. I would have no interest in it whatsoever. Like, I wasn't even interested in the party 2 years ago, just because it fucking ate so much shit during lockdowns. I was like, all right, here we go. But yeah, if it became a racist movement, none of us would be involved.
That's kind of the confusing part about all this, because we have people like JBH who leaves and says he left because the party was a bunch of racists. It's like, well, you were the leader, right? Like, it was your part. Right. Why did you stay this long if it's a racist party? If you think it's that big a deal, how come it took a corrupt scandal coming up for you to suddenly realize that there's a bunch of racism going on?
Yeah, exactly.
I did also call for him to resign. I don't want that. That was and I got to say, I even like the guy, but that was a dumb thing. That was a dumb. Some of the maneuvering over this, like, there's some people you got to kick out. Like, when somebody is shouting and like just spouting anti-Semitism at your meetings, and like literally you can't talk because they're just like down with the Jews. kick him out, right? Or
Everybody agrees.
if you've got
if you're that much of a disruptor, even if there wasn't bigotry involved, it'd be like, fuck you, get out of here.
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah.
Or like, when like it's like Jackie Perry, and then there's moments where it's like, I mean, we've had these affiliates just been like, let's get rid of this mass all at once, or this mass all at once, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, you instantly make me hate you when you do this. Like, there's not,
but I don't know of any instance of the Mises Caucus doing that. See, I think that's what's fascinating, is that our opponents are doing these like backroom dealing shady shit where they kick 100 people out at a clip, and you're like, and yet we're the cult. It just doesn't add up. I'll answer this for Anthony. He says, does Hodey acknowledge the cultist behavior of those that blindly hate the LPMC? You probably tuned in a little bit late. He already said that he did, and I respect that, and I appreciate that, because it's crystal clear that there is some aspects. You don't have to go the cult route, but
right,
definitely
we can call it whatever.
Fuck.
But the same issue, I have the issue. Yeah.
Right on. Cam Anarchy, your question isn't that good. He said, whatever. Why should any libertarian respect someone who condemns us and says we're in a cult but can't back it up with any good arguments?
Oh, my arguments aren't good. Let me prove I'm not in a cult by just saying that everything this person that agrees with
You're
me
dumb,
is
Hodey.
great, and everything that the person who disagrees with me said is bad. I'm not in a cult. No, look, I mean, this is, and I don't want to, I'm joking about that, because everybody goes into debates that way. Right. It's like showing up at a baseball game. There's like, how often are you going to end up rooting for the other team by the end of it? I mean, unless the other pitcher is pitching like a perfect game or something, you're not going to be rooting for the other team by the end of it. It's, I get that. A lot of what I hope that people take from this stays for a while, and that it's something that you wrestle with. And I mean, I even feel like I've gotten some great reaffirmation when we talk about the division of labor and stuff with Clint, to say like, hey, I tell you what, let's not treat you people like crap. I'm not going to treat these people like crap, and let's work together, right? Let's do this thing. I take that deal in a heartbeat. If you don't think any of my arguments are good, then you're too far gone, right? Like, wrestle with it, like, think for a moment, and it's going to take some time. I'm not going to instantly change on the LPMC today, but I'm open to it. It's probably something that I would, if I were to, I would need to wrestle with it for months, right?
You're going to be the biggest Mises Caucus supporter by the end of this year. I'm so fucking stoked to see it.
I did debates against anarchy and everything. I'm an anarchist now. Now, did it happen in the middle of a debate? Did it happen because I was watching the middle of the debate and I went, whoa, I was wrong about everything, and now I'm an anarchist? No, these are things that we wrestle with over the course of time. So with people like Cam, who are thinking like, all this guy's stuff sucked, well, all I'm asking is that you wrestle with it. If it's not worth you wrestling with, then thanks for commenting and boosting the views, and that's all I can say.
Daniel 3 Podcast said that he had gay LPMC people who didn't like the pride thing. It's not really a question, so get your own show. Moving on.
He's trying.
He's
trying, man.
He's trying to make his show work in one way or another. But yeah.
Don't kick me out of the LPMC, even though I hated it too.
All right. I think this is going to be the last one unless somebody drops something good. This is from Jack Casey. He says, and he's actually a recent convert to the LPMC, and he's been having a lot of he had a lot of the same concerns that you did, and we've had conversations behind the scenes, and he just came around, and he's like trying to talk to other people and do basically what we're doing here, having private conversations with, not that this is private, but having real human conversations, being like, dude, these rumors are just rumors, and here's why, and whatever. So I'm going to take his, also because he sponsors the show. But all of my comments are super chats, because I can't find that at the front of all my long ass comments. LOL. Thanks, Jack Casey. All right. So CD McRae says, what? Are we crying at a baseball? I don't know what these people are talking about. They're delusional, whatever. But this has been fun.
They're cultists. What do you expect?
They are cultists. They are speaking in code. It's all dog whistles up in here.
That's a league of their own reference, I believe, as someone who was born in the 80s. Anyways.
Old people. I get it.
I was born in 84. Clint, I think I'm actually older than you.
No, you're not. 2 years younger.
Oh
damn.
I'm an old fuck, dude.
Check. I lost my mic. Oh no. All right,
hi,
but
Dan.
before this thing derails any further, let's get the fuck out of here and call it a day. But I do want to give you guys each just 2 minutes or whatever to give any final thoughts you have on how this went, or how you feel, or if there's anything that we haven't covered. And do give your plugs and tell everybody where they can find you and everything you got going on. Hodey, we will start with you.
Yeah. Anybody that is like, hey, you didn't make a single good point, nothing that resonated with me, shame on you. But also, if you're like, Hodey made all the good points and Clint made none, shame on you. Because I'm in the middle of this thing, and I can tell you that there's a lot of learning to be done. Right? Like, it's just how it is. And look, I've having been a speech and debate junkie my whole life. They paid for my college. I got 3 national championships. I can tell you when things went disastrously wrong, and they didn't for either of us. This is a great conversation and something that we can build on, something that we can move forward with. I think we've got a lot of understanding and a lot of perspectives gained. All I'm asking you, LPMC or other people, is check yourself and ask yourself if you are being more loving, more charitable, more compassionate, because this is something I needed to ask myself before this whole thing happened, right? Because I imagine I could have the same debate without the context of Hodey said that we're all cultists, right? Made a collectivist statement. I could still have this. Hey guys, I think there's a cultural problem. Had I said that, I would still be here. Instead, what happened is I said everybody ain't a cultist, and now I'm here and people are like, now I'm making bingo cards about kicking me out, right? That's just what happens, right? When you make these mistakes, right? When you let these little things go. I talk about doing the little things wrong. I'm not going to claim to, be perfect either. I lost the little things. Hey, maybe I should reach out to Dan personally and see what his experience is. Hey, maybe I found a great conversation about the Tom Wood stuff on this show, right? After I had already condemned the LPMC, too late, right? Like, I had already said this. And so I'm not taking back any of my points about like the problems that I have, the cultural issues. I do want all those fixed. I hope that Clint and others and everybody takes seriously that this is a cultural problem that we want fixed, that we want to say, if you are into liberty, if you are into the getting rid of the wars, or like, I don't like it when trans kids are bullied to death at school. I don't care which end you're on of like the liberty thing, or like we can have all these priorities different. I'm talking about maximum liberty all the time in your face, and I'm not going to slack off, right, on one area or the other, because everybody matters to me. Now, if you find that one area of your liberty is, maybe needs to be bolstered a little bit, yeah, we're all on that journey. I'm a better libertarian than I was a year ago. I hope to be better in a year from now. There's a lot of arguments that just have to take shape that you need to sit down and learn from. Look into the mirror and ask yourself, is this the right journey that I'm on? Because I feel like you can be honest with yourself. In debates, we're all angling, right? Online social media, it's all fake. But when you look at yourself and it's just you in the mirror, and you'd be like, you know what? Was that the coolest way I could have treated that person? Was that the coolest way, like, for me to talk to somebody? I know I've had to say no a lot, and I regret those times. And I hope that other people that hear this, because they hear my regret, also say like, hey, you know what? Was the way I treated others also cool? Probably not, right? Maybe that wasn't the coolest way to treat somebody. And now maybe if I see my friends, saying like, trans people suck, instead of messaging Hodey in the comments and being like, no, we don't think they suck, I'm going to say, you know what, dude? You're my brother. I can't control his side. I can control your side. I have an influence on you. I don't want you saying stuff like that, And I'm not going to make this all about one single trans issue, because liberty is so much greater than this, right? Whether it's the freedom, the economics, the self-ownership, the individualism, the anti-war, the anti-government, the anti-drug war. Embrace it all, right? Let it all wash over you. And all I want you to do is look in the mirror and say, am I better on that than I was last week, last year? Am I cooler to people? Am I better at recruiting people who think differently than I was last week, last month, last year? Because I'll give you, I'm not as big a recruiter as Dave Smith. I'm a small time recruiter, right? I'm getting better, but I'm not there yet. I hope to be someday. And I hope he continues to recruit people, turn the Middle East into glass people. And I continue to hope that he takes those pro-war, kill all the Muslims people and makes them into, hey, that's why wars suck. That's why killing all the Muslims suck. And I hope that journey continues. I really appreciate, Dan, I appreciate you reaching out to me. Clint, I appreciate you reaching out to me. Both, we weren't really friends before this. I think like officially I've followed you and stuff before, but I think we just became friends, and I appreciate you guys seeing through my mistakes and being willing to to listen to the criticisms that I have that are valid and taking them seriously. I know there's a lot of people that are just like, tell this guy he's a pussy and to shut the hell up. Some of those people are well respected in the LPMC.
Oh, I've got Cam Anarchy pissed off at me for calling out his bad question. Dude, get your own show. That's all I'm gonna say. Freedom of association.
You know what? I have my own stuff going on. Find me on Enemy of My Enemy. Find me on the Real Libertarians Network. Enemy of My Enemy is the name of my podcast on that network. What we do is we actually bring a left, right, and center libertarian voice to the topics of the day, and we talk about them from left, right, and center libertarian views. I can always appreciate a good conversation and people that are willing to engage in it. I will admit I lost more than a little sleep on this last night because I've seen Clint in other forms, and I was scared I was going to get that Clint, and I was very happy. I shouldn't have been worried, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you both for having this conversation with me. And I hope everybody takes the commission that I said. If you look in the mirror and you say there's no problem, great. That's it. You won't hear anything further from me. My new identity is not the LPMC guy. I also do not, I really am not seeking out these debates because I don't want to be that guy. I'm a pro-liberty guy. I'm not an anti-LPMC guy. I'm not even an anti-government guy. I'm anti-government only because I'm pro-liberty, right? Like, get the F out of my way and let me do my stuff. And I don't want to be that guy. I'm not trying to create a new cult, right? Seriously, think for yourselves, people. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it, Clint. Final words. Dan, have some fun.
For sure. And Hodey, are you cool with people reaching out to you if they have questions? Because I know there are some questions in the chat that we didn't get to, and I want to make sure that the conversation is had, because it clearly needs to be had. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of misconceptions on all sides, so I think it's important. But Clint,
yeah.
Oh, go. So sorry. Yes.
Oh yeah, reach out to me at the Hodeman on Twitter. I'm at the Hodeman. Cool. I do now. Here's the thing. My main public persona, I write about video games for a living. I do use my real name. And so you will see a lot of me writing about video game stuff. Sure. I also talk about politics on the same thing because that's who I am. And both parts are part of my character. You also find some barbecue stuff. But yeah, feel free to talk me up publicly, privately, whatever you want to do. At the Hodeman on Twitter. I'm Hodey Johns on Facebook. I am not really anywhere else.
Right on. Cool, man. Clint, go ahead. Final thoughts and any and all plugs. Anything you want to say?
Yeah. Final thoughts. I probably will not be doing any more of these style of debates. The reason I was willing to do it with Hodey is because I think that his priorities are in alignment with mine. And I had a lot of people that wanted me to tear your head off, Hodey. And I don't think that's merited when you do see the bigger issues. The people that really prioritize, expunging racism from our hearts and minds are the people that I have no interest in, giving respect to, because I think it's just an absurdity and it's an impossibility. And I don't respect those people enough to even let them really get their points across to me, because it's so fucking stupid. So take that as a compliment. I think that you are more in alignment with me politically than most of our detractors. And ultimately, I honestly envision you being in the Mises Caucus at some point in the future, because I think you'll realize that if you value these things and you believe that there is a political movement that can help alleviate some of these issues, you will find that in the Mises. We'll find out if I'm right or not doing these debates, because I don't feel that they're matter conversation and say your piece, shut off all lines of communication on something that's not